statistics.
When has a chance, can they tell me if my audio and video are good?
Yes.
Hello.
For sure.
Yes, you're coming through well. Can you hear that?
Yes, I can hear that. Am I just gonna like speak into the void all night, or can I see people? I mean, if I have to, it's fine. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Newcastle City Council meeting for June 21. It is 7 p.m., and with that, I will call the meeting to order. Will you please rise and join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and tonight we have our Deputy City Clerk filling in for City Clerk White. Will you please call the roll?
Deputy Mayor Sherlock. Here. Councilmember Griffin. Here. Councilmember Villasenor. Here. Councilmember Lacotia.
Here.
Councilmember Charbonneau.
Virtually here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Thank you.
And Mayor Nguyen is here as well. No, no worries. I told you I had the other oar. All right. Before we move forward with our meeting tonight, I want to just say a couple things. First of all, June 7th was our town hall. It was by no means my best performance. It was a rough night for me. I let down a community. I let down a council. I let down my wonderful staff as well. I can't even tell you how many times I went through my presentation, my notes. I unfortunately called the meeting about 20 to 9, and I had in my brain and in my notes that we needed to adjourn and wrap up at 8:30. I reached a moment of panic, I'm afraid. And I think being on council 6.5 years, I hope my constituents know me better and as a stronger person and as a more precise person than I displayed on June 7th. And with that, I hope you understand my heartfelt apologies. I was mortified when Councilmember Clark's email caught my eye Wednesday, and he pointed out we should have gone to 9 o'clock. Unfortunately, I wish somebody would have pointed out the night before on the floor, but that didn't happen. And I just felt so bad. And to this community and everyone involved, I sincerely apologize. All right.
Mayor, if I could say something, on behalf of staff, we accept your apology. We also really appreciate your candor. It's unprecedented for me to hear that, and I sincerely hope there's other compassion for you. You did your best. Unfortunately, I was not there, but I know that staff joins me in saying that you did your best, and unfortunately, you were forgotten about the last part of the meeting. And
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Moving on. Agenda approval. Is there a motion to approve the final agenda? I'm sorry, let's rephrase that. Are there any objections to the final agenda? Hearing none. Agenda is approved. Public comment. We have a couple of people with us this evening on a wonderful sunny evening in Newcastle. What, the warmest day of the year, I believe, so far. So thank you for coming out. And I'll go ahead and open the public comment. Individuals may speak for 3 minutes. Please state your name and your area of residence. And Director Bronze, do we have any virtually? All right.
We have one so far, Madam Mayor.
Perfect. Let's go ahead.
Okay. And Carol Simpson, you are unmuted, and please go ahead and offer your public comment.
Hi, good evening. You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry you can't see me. I'm sorry I didn't show up in person. It was a busy afternoon. I was really tired after going to the mall. And it is summer. I wore white pants, and I'm really happy. It felt so good outside. And thank you for the town hall. Yes, it was a stressful evening, and I'm very sorry we did that, that it ended a little early, and I totally understand. Sometimes we do get discombobulated, and we try our best, and things happen. And thank you for your apology, Mayor Newing. It was a very interesting evening. Many people voted on how they feel the ARPA funds should be distributed. And there were a lot who felt that they should just be distributed in the interest of fiscal sustainability. But it was not presented at the meeting how that would be executed and what that would mean. And so I was confused. And I'm confused about the people who voted for that option, what they think will happen. So in my confusion, I decided I would send an email to the city council members asking what will happen if the city goes forward in expending these funds in promoting fiscal sustainability for the city. I want the public to know that I heard back from nobody. Not a single council member answered my question. Even the ones who are very pro fiscal sustainability and fiscal conservativeness for the city answered that question. I hope this evening to hear an answer on how you think ARPA funds will promote fiscal sustainability for the city. Because if you think we'll just spend those monies to balance the budget each year, boy, are you getting a good deal. You get to balance the budget during your tenure on council by using, again, one-time revenues. This city has kicked the can down the proverbial fiscal road for years, balancing the budget with hocus pocus, one-time revenues, development revenue, found money, whatever they can do. We'll bring in money from REIT to pay for a planning issue, and that's just sending it the problem down the road to new councils, and you're not fixing the problem of fiscal sustainability for the city. One-time revenue should not be used for ongoing operating expenses. And I'm only speaking to 8 people probably, because there might not be anybody else at the meeting who I don't know. I can't see the audience sitting there. I wish I could. I don't know if the camera can be moved around. I can't even see who the substitute clerk is this evening. So I want to hear from you council members, how ARPA funds will fiscally sustain this city and how long you think it will do it. Thank you very much.
No more in the Zoom room, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Director Bronze. I will close the public comment. All right, ceremonial presentations. We do have 2 proclamations on our agenda tonight. However, nobody is in the audience to receive them. Proclamation number 1 addresses Juneteenth, recently celebrated, and the acknowledgement of the end of slavery. Proclamation number 2 recognizes June as Pride Month. June 1, we raised the Pride flag here at Newcastle, and the entire staff came downstairs to join me. It was quite fun. Good afternoon. So with those two, they will be signed and forwarded to the city clerk. Okay, moving on to council comment. Councilmember Clark, do you want to start us off?
Thank you, Mayor Newing. Thank you for your initial comments, Mayor Newing. That's appreciated. Thank you. The town hall was interesting. It was many of our first times on the podium, so it was interesting. I'm hoping that the next time that we all have equal opportunity to contribute to that, and it will probably make it a lot smoother. What struck out to me and at the town hall was, of course, the overwhelming response, to the questions about what should we do to the money. We'll be talking about that later this evening. But fiscal sustainability, as the public commenter mentioned, and yes, you will hear, Ms. Simpson, what I think about that when we talk about the ARPA. Thank you for that. And but it was pretty clear that the public spoke and wanted fiscal sustainability. I know a couple of my fellow council members had said, let's hear what the people say at the city council, or excuse me, at the town hall, and we heard. So hopefully we now have the answers that we need. Thank you.
Councilmember Charbonneau, I'll go ahead and go over to you because I don't want to forget you.
Thank you.
I looked at your
Appreciate that.
empty chair. I'm like, Councilmember Charbonneau.
I'm assuming my volume is good. Awesome. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I want to thank the city of Newcastle for helping me represent us at the Association of Washington Cities Conference. I have found a large cadre of rented council members who have adopted me, so that is helpful for the week. I'm looking forward to representing us there. For our fiscally conservative council members, do not worry. I borrowed my dad's car, which is more fuel efficient, so my gas reimbursement will be lower. Sorry, it's weird. I'm virtual. I can't tell if anyone laughed at that. I wanted to celebrate all the recent grads between the town hall and this meeting. We had a lot of high school graduations. I attended the Hazen one, but Hazen High School, Liberty High School, as well as I know we have a lot of kids in the sort of private schools as well. These kids had to go through 2 years of a pandemic in a really unprecedented situation. And I'm very proud of all of them, quite frankly. And I just wanted to touch briefly on the town hall. I think something that no one else has really commented on that I found I really appreciated was I saw more diversity in a plethora of ways at that meeting than I've seen at any Newcastle event when it comes to age, from really young folks all the way up to senior citizens, when it comes to racial diversity, when it comes to different group. I know we had a lot of homeowners there, but we did have a lot of tenants that I was really excited to talk with afterwards, and renters. I will say, I think I went through, honestly, a range of emotions. I was pretty disappointed that I wasn't able to be, involved in the planning process of something like this. I wasn't able to have a greater understanding. I would appreciate in the future means to sort of maybe do a practice run or get a better idea of what might be ahead of us. But that being said, too, I think there's a lot of pressure put on us a lot of times as individuals. So I want to thank the mayor for taking the time to apologize. A lot of us are folks that work full time that are coming into this work just trying to give our best effort, and pulled in a lot of different ways. People are constantly telling us how to do our job. And we're not always going to be perfect every single time. And I appreciate the mayor acknowledging that. That is all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Lacotia.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say welcome, first day of summer. We've started with 73 degrees, fingers crossed. We keep it that way, and 80 is fine too. Regarding the town hall, thank you, Madam Mayor, for your initial comments. And all I can say, I hope that next time this whole council body will be involved in the planning process, and we will work as a team and put a good show out there together in the future. Yes, the results that the whole purpose of the town hall was to see what the citizens wanted to say, and we saw that the verdict was out. Their first, second, third priorities were all, financial sustainability, and I hope that this council body will honor the wishes of the majority of our citizens. Many of us wrote to us, and I know ex-council member Tamara Kameen also asked a few questions. We were able to answer one of her questions, but there were other two questions that we couldn't get through. I just wanted to say that, Ms. Kameen, your question regarding the 6-year fiscal sustainability model that we paid management partners to create for us, I had actually made a similar request in the finance committee. And I was told that the committee needs a majority. The majority of the committee has to make a request for that. And I was pointed to the 6-year model, not a model, but the static numbers that we have in our budget. And I do understand that that doesn't solve the purpose that we're looking for, because the management partner model has a what-if analysis, and that gives us the flexibility to simulate what the sustainability would look like. In answering to Ms. Carroll's question regarding what we're going to do about fiscal sustainability, I think this model can give us a lot of answers. If the finance committee majority wants it, then we can update this model and kind of simulate and learn a lot from it. And Ms. Kameen, regarding your second question regarding cost reductions, I have not seen anything, any plans around cost controls from the council, so I haven't seen any of that. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Villasenor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. They say that 80% of success is just showing up. And so I want to thank everyone who participated in the town hall and for showing up. Thank you for your voices, and I've heard you. We continue our discussion on pandemic relief funds tonight, and it's my view that if we can properly marry priority and schedule, then we can bring aid to small businesses and all the nonprofit groups who need support from these funds and who make our community a brighter and more, just a better place. But we can also create enough runway to maintain, to remain financially nimble enough to react to changes in the broader economy. So tonight I will ask the question, why not both? Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Griffin.
Thank you, Mayor Newing. With regards to the town hall, it's behind us now. Nothing we can do to change that, so we need to move forward and see if we can do a better job working as a council instead of working as we have been in the past. I think everybody needs to listen to each other. With regards to Carol Simpson's remark about us coming up with a plan for the sustainability. She was on the council whenever they wrote the sustainability program. We paid a lot of money for it, and they dropped that off on a brand new council. There's 3 of us that were brand new, and we were supposed to start a sustainability program in our second meeting of the first year. So I think it's a little unfair to look at us and say, well, I'm not hearing anything about sustainability. I think we need to look at the money that we got. I was on the finance committee, and the finance committee was looking to replace revenue that the city lost during the pandemic. Now, this would be the same to me as though it were sales tax income or the real estate property tax income. So I don't think that we need to try to dump it all in the city and go from there. We dumped $881,000 on this year's budget. And, her comment was, well, we shouldn't do it on the budget because we've done it already once, so we're not going to have that problem until probably July or August of this year when we start working on the budget. We'll be looking for money to to fix the budget with. It's always been that problem. I do want to thank the citizens for showing up at the meeting. It was a good turnout. We had 150 people there, and most of them were interested in hearing what we had to say and the direction that they thought we might take the city for them. Thank you, Mayor Newing.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Sherlock, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll echo the sentiments of thanking everyone for coming out to Town Hall. It was really nice to finally do that. And I agree with a lot of what's been said up here, so I'm excited to move on in our meeting and get down to the nuts and bolts of these conversations. But happy summer. Looking forward to seeing everyone at the concerts as well.
All right, that concludes council comments. Moving on, mayor's report. I have a couple things tonight. First of all, I don't know, I want to make sure everybody has received this information, but COVID vaccines are now available to our youngest members of the population, 6 months to 5 years old. So time for the little ones to roll up their sleeves, and let's keep them safe and healthy this summer and ready to get back to preschool in the fall. On Saturday, I attended the memorial for Jean Garber at Lake Bourne. It was well attended. It was, a trip in time to look at all the photos her family displayed, old photos. In fact, my husband noticed one of a running club that he's done some timing with years ago, but there was the photos alone told quite the story about Jean Garber. Tomorrow, June 22nd, marks an unfortunate day here in Newcastle. And 20 years ago tomorrow, Officer Rich Herzog was gunned down on a Sunday afternoon while he was out on patrol and responded to a call of a crisis at one of our apartment dwellings. Officer Herzog was unfortunately shot with his own gun, which he dropped in a scuffle with the perpetrator. And this individual was ultimately found guilty, and he's currently serving a life sentence without parole in prison. This was actually, I want to actually thank former council member Carol Simpson for reminding us of this tragic day here in Newcastle. I remember driving by Officer Herzog's makeshift memorial on Coal Creek Parkway for several weeks thereafter. And I have often said that I may have been mayor during a pandemic, but former mayor and council member John Dulcich was in my seat during this horrific incident here in our city and handled it with great grace and integrity, and brought our community together to mourn and to heal. So please remember Officer Herzog tomorrow, and we do have a little memorial for him here in Newcastle. I know it's visited quite frequently by passersby, but a very important contributor to our public safety here in Newcastle. And finally, this is our last council meeting before the July 4th holiday, and I want to wish everybody a safe and happy 4th of July weekend, and we will see you again on the 5th. So, moving on, council committee reports. Any finance committee report? Councilmember Phyllis Senor, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to inform everyone in our discussions in Finance Committee, we're no longer referring to ARPA funds, as we've now processed those funds internally. We are referring to them internally as pandemic relief funds. So if you hear that term used instead of ARPA, that is how we're referring to the funds that are currently in our possession. So, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Any regional committee updates? Councilmember Clark, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor Newing. I want to apologize to my fellow council members. I'm a member of the Metropolitan Solid Waste Committee, but I was traveling out of town in New York, and I expected to be able to get on a computer at the time of the meeting, but I was unable to because of family issues, so I apologize. So when I have the notes from the meeting, I will update everybody, but there's not a lot going on other than some ongoing negotiations over their new waste sites that they're developing in the Northwest. So I will have an update as soon as possible. My apologies for that.
Thank you. City managers.
Madam Mayor?
I'm sorry, Councilmember Charbonneau. I told you I'd
Yeah,
forget
I
you
was
at
gonna
least
say
once.
the ghost voice has an update for you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I attended Sound City Association PIC Committee, Public Issues Committee, June 8th. Currently, of note for folks, they're developing sewer and solid waste rates for January effective January 1st, 2023. We're currently updating the Clean Water Plan Guiding Principles, which is a joint King County and City effort committee. Those are the entities that work on it. And then coming up in November, the Conservation Futures ballot measure will be a part of your ballot, along with all the other items under ballot, statewide races, legislative races and such. And that is a measure that is looking at a small tax increase to try and preserve green spaces in King County. So natural spaces, things of that nature. That is coming up for more discussion down the line. And then on June 10th, I attended the Eastside Transportation Partnership. Paul White told me he would put these sort of memos in the share with the broader group, so I'm trusting he's doing that. But the only thing to note is the Zero Youth Fare Initiative, so folks that are under 18 can get rides for free, which I think is pretty cool. That is all I have.
Thank you. My apologies for overlooking you. Now, city manager reports. City manager Larson, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, and members of the audience. The copy of the city manager report is in the packet, but I'll hit on some of the highlights here that of note. The staff's currently is reviewing the Lee property development proposal. It'll come back to council later this summer with a development agreement. I want to put a shout out of sorts to members of the public, our residents and community members. We got vacancies on the Planning Commission and the Community Activities Commission, and we'd really like to have some folks step up. As of right now, we had not received any applications for either of those two committee or commissions, and we would sincerely like to see folks help out and participate. I know that the Community Activities Commission is going to be putting together some type of strategy on an outreach and renew that effort again this summer. The Southeast May Creek Park Drive construction project is going to, after long and hard discussions, I know of staff, I know Jeff led this, Jeff Bronze, that we're going to have to do a complete closure of that drive to accommodate the construction from, it'll be closed from Monday, June 27th through Monday, July 18th, which is an extended period of time. We're working with the contractor, obviously, to get that project done as quickly as we can. Jeff, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to make one clarification. That's actually the assemblage development that's doing that work in the closure. The city does have a construction project on the same roadway, just slightly to the west.
Thank you. Appreciate that clarification. Staffing updates. Sarah Jacobs and staff have been hard at work with several new hires. I don't need to go through the detail of those. I do want to highlight a couple of them, though, in addition to the seasonal maintenance workers and the interns we're hiring. We're going to be doing interviews this week for the events and recreation coordinator. And then council next week will be meeting with GMP consultants to review the city manager applications as part of that process. The community development director, the first review of those applications will be July 5th. And then the senior planner position is under recruitment at this time as well. I want to thank staff for all their hard work on that. And of note, there's going to be an Alan White tribute. Alan White, of course, I think everyone knows, passed away on May 26th. But we're going to have this as part of the Newcastle Days on September 10th and celebrating Alan White Day in Newcastle on September 12th. and more details will be forthcoming on that. I do want to make an update here. I was handed a note that we do have 3 applications for, it appears, the Planning Commission, so I want to make sure I note that as well. Thank you for those who did apply. And upcoming events, July 23rd is the Art Walk at the Newcastle Commons. It sounds like it's going to be a very exciting event, and I wasn't sure if there was one last year, and I want to note that if there wasn't, I'm looking forward to that. We got summer concerts coming up on July 20th, July 27th, August 3rd, August 10th, and August 17th with some fabulous music, it looks like. I encourage everyone to try to get out there and enjoy those. I didn't see a note in here as to what time these concerts start. Does staff happen to know offhand? 7 p.m., thank you. And of course, Newcastle Days is on September 10th. And then lastly, it was not on the actual report, but I do want to add that the Finance Committee will be reviewing the budget calendar at its meeting this week. And it'll be the first look, and I believe they'll be recommending something to council more formally once we get some dates set as far as getting council together. It looks like trying to get them together in late August, perhaps, or early September. For a fairly long workshop session, and again in sometime in October, later October, as we get the budget discussions moving. That concludes my report, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, it's been moved by Deputy Mayor Sherlock, seconded by Councilmember Villasenor to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it, 7-0. Okay, moving on. After I flip gears here, general business, we have item number 11.1, the pandemic relief plan, and I believe Director Palmer, you have some information for us. And just for clarification, Steve Toller is not speaking tonight. He's not participating in the meeting, but we do have Director Palmer.
I did ask Steve Toller to sit in the audience, and that's where he's parked right now, so I don't anticipate anything to bail me out. I think I can go through this pretty well. We've been dealing with this for a while now. So the discussion on the pandemic relief, we can go to the first slide. It's just a way of background of issues that things that we've gone through since April 5th. City Council has assisted by voting on some important information to get us through ARPA. One of those is the reporting requirements that was passed on April 5th. And then Council approved a couple ordinances back to back on April 19th and May 3rd. And then on May 17th, we followed up with the pandemic. Thank you, Councilmember Villasenor, for mentioning that with regards to the different options. City Council did very well in terms of narrowing down 18 options down to 9. And so staff tonight is going to be seeking direction on those 9 items and how to allocate $2.4 million. Which is what we said that we would do in that April 5th resolution. Next slide. So the commitments to date is that we've received the first tranche. We have not yet received the second tranche. It should be coming the end of this month still. We've passed that resolution that I mentioned earlier. And then management partners, I wanted to point this out because there's some confusion about the surveys and whatnot. So I wanted to mention that, and it's listed in this slide here. And so I don't know that I need to go through it, but I just want to mention the fact that they reviewed a lot more than just a few citizens and a few businesses. Going on to the next slide, these are the summary of the 9 funding options that City Council in the 4 different major categories that councils had eliminated down to the 9 back on May, what day was that? The 17th. So, and then the next slide kind of gives us a slide about the financial considerations that management partners provided for us. They're not my numbers, they're just numbers that we used for indications, and they also came from staff. So for example, the facilities, the annex. I think Jeff contributed a lot to what we think we might need there. So with that, the action in the next slide I'd be seeking for is to discuss and select the funding options the City Council wishes to include in a funding plan and direct staff to prepare a resolution for consideration at the July 18th meeting. If we can't, we have time to go on beyond that, of course. But so if we go back to the previous slide, I'll let council just sit and discuss that now at this time.
Thank you, Director Palmer. Any questions for Director Palmer before we move forward? Okay, this is an item we've talked about quite often, as Director Palmer mentioned. What we're looking for tonight is make our topics of, the areas in which we want to invest clear to staff so they can bring back an ordinance. We don't have to determine amounts tonight. That is not part of the goal here. And if there are any further reductions to this list, I'm happy to entertain motions. So go ahead.
Can I mention one more thing? I do have on here, and I'm not showing it, but the original list of the 18 options, because I think that Councilmember Paul Charbonneau had mentioned that, all of the options are available. So I also have the other 18 if they should come on board on a slide, but I didn't want to go backwards. So if that does come up, I just want to graciously say to Councilmember Charbonneau that we do have that list available.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Sherlock, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I would like to make a motion to remove the last one, city fleet and equipment. On this list, I've talked with staff, and that's we have a fund for that, and it seems to be a pretty healthy fund. And so in what discussions that I've had with staff, I feel like that is not necessary for this, to use this money for. So.
Second.
Okay, I missed a second on that one. Okay. It's been moved by Deputy Mayor Sherlock, seconded by Councilmember Charbonneau, to remove item number 9, city fleet and equipment, from the list of consideration. Deputy Mayor Sherlock, would you like to speak to your motion?
And I apologize, I guess I already spoke to it. So.
All right, Councilmember Charbonneau, anything to add?
I would just echo that, and I think it was self-identified by staff in a past meeting that they said that they didn't feel like this was, too huge of a priority. Please correct me, staff, if that is wrong, but they didn't feel like it was critical or that it would make a huge difference at this time.
Okay, further comments? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. The motion on the floor is to remove item number 9, city fleet and equipment, from consideration of the list of potential ARPA investment, pandemic relief investment list. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 7-0. Okay, we are now looking at items 1 through 8. Unless there is something on the original list, as Director Palmer mentioned. Further comments?
Madam Mayor,
Councilmember Charbonneau, go ahead, please.
I move to include item number 6, downtown improvements promoting tourism, for consideration for staff to bring back for a vote on July 18th to prepare.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Charbonneau, seconded by Deputy Mayor Sherlock, to include downtown improvements to the list for items of consideration. Councilmember Charbonneau, would you like to speak to your motion, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, so I would like to, I by no means have a full interest in spending the, upper limit of $2 million on this. I think what my goal is here is that you've seen it in our advertisement from for our own city manager position. I've harped on it a million times, so I'll say it for you. We have thousands of cars that drive through our city each day, and we need, by all means, to get them to stop here and spend money. I think this is no better encapsulated by a conversation I had earlier today with Renton council member Ryan McIrvin, who is on more regional boards than I can name, is one of the works in the legislature, one of the most frankly nerdy policy people I will ever talk to. And he bikes through Newcastle every day to the city of Bothell. And he told me, man, I had not gone back to the Commons before, but I did. It was so cool. I stopped and I got food there. And I realize it's kind of a joking anecdote, but it's true. We don't have folks stopping to spend money here. We talk about fiscal sustainability. This is a fiscal sustainability initiative. I'm not saying we need to go all the way and have electronic bulletin boards, but I think looking at wayfinding signage, looking at banners that could be constructed, those are all be boons to get more people to actually stop here. And I think it could be a really great consideration for our city. I also think it's worth noting that we do have a lot of staff turnover right now. In terms of staff time, we do have a downtown plan that has been drafted. So there are means that can be taken from that plan that has been drafted. This can be a potential revenue driver, and I would like to see it more parsed out and potentially vote on it on July 18th.
Deputy Mayor Sherlock, anything to add?
Oh, that was well said.
Further comments? Councilmember Clark, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor Newing. Councilmember Charbonneau, can you help us out with an idea of how much money you're thinking of and what you think would be a return on this money? Like, how many years, or, how do you see this money coming back to Newcastle? I besides the obvious that maybe people will stop and spend money, I get it, but what is the return on this money? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so thank you for that question, Councilmember Clark. I think, in terms of the amount being spent, I would need to see the numbers from staff, of course. I would not be interested in doing something like, the pedestrian bridge that's mentioned, or the pedestrian improvements that would cost a lot more money, or the electronic billboard even. Something I've noticed, and I'll talk about this later, going up to frequent, seeing some of the mayors and council members of other cities for the tenant protections later on. There's a lot of signage that directs you to where things are. So having direction of the welcome to Bothell, the arrows pointing to the downtown, the arrows pointing to different things, or food this way, it would come back in the form of sales tax revenue that we could get more folks to stop at the local businesses and spend more money there. Money that is spent in our city is a boon for us because it comes back as that sales tax revenue. I think we've had a lot of talk about business grants. We've had a lot of talk about a lot of these different means. I want to try to do something that is not necessarily a direct cash infusion, but can help us for the long term. And I think it would come into effect over the long term by getting more people to stop and getting more people to be aware of everything that is here. Because I know it might sound very abstract, but we do have thousands and thousands of people driving through our city each day. We're having an Amazon headquarters, additional one being built in the city of Bellevue that's going to just continue to drive more and more traffic. I think it is a worthy investment for those sort of means.
Deputy Mayor Sherlock, go ahead.
Thank you. And just to follow up on that, I had a lot of discussions with staff about kind of pricing and what that would get. And Mariah kind of put together a little plan last time we discussed this, and I had done, and I know we're not deciding numbers right now, but I had down about 300,000 would potentially be enough to get some, exactly what Councilmember Charbonneau was talking about, get signs, some beautification to attract commuters to stop. And so signage that you're in Newcastle, signs pointing to businesses, also potentially some infrastructure where we could hang baskets or hang flags of if there's an event going on. So that type of stuff, and it seemed that 300,000 seemed like a good conservative amount that could get us all those things.
Okay, further comment? Councilmember Lakota?
Is there a business case that you're thinking to work on where generally when we do projects like these, it's important that we do a business case with a 5-year ROI and what the return would look like? And, I would definitely want to see the assumptions. And your assumptions could also be based on if other cities have done similar things and what their return was, because if you just come up with your own assumption that yes, this would drive this, and that we wouldn't know if those are, is something to back your assumptions. So I think anytime we do things like this, it's important that we have a solid business case with NPV, net present value, and a proper cash flow, and at least a return on investment, what that would look like.
Deputy Mayor Sherlock, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to say, I think that that's definitely something that I expect as well. And when we're talking about actual numbers, and I think right now we're discussing how we want to invest this money into the community. So I personally have heard a lot about the potential return on investment for several of these items, and I feel comfortable, especially with this one, backing it so that we can move forward in the process for exactly that, to get more information and to look into what's the right number and how it's going to help the businesses and the city overall. Can I ask, side note, and this is very helpful for the people in the room to see this on the screen, but I will say in watching this back on YouTube, when something like this is up, no one can see us discussing. So I don't know how people feel about what should be on the screen at the time.
Actually, I believe that the YouTube stream is showing the council at large.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to mention as well that this type of program will help our businesses thrive that already exist here, but it will also speak to new businesses looking to come to Newcastle. And they'll say, wow, they're pointing out that we're here. They're doing some, if you want to call it advertising, you can. But we are doing promotion of these businesses. And when other agencies see current businesses thriving, they want to come here too. And that builds our community. And that's part of the value of this type of program. Councilmember Griffin?
Thank you, Mayor Newing. I don't see that we have the kind of businesses that's probably going to attract tourists to come into our city, unless we have something going like something at the park that they'd be interested in. For the city businesses that we have, I don't see very many of them. Restaurants, sure. But if we've got people coming here, stopping off, they're going to see the restaurants anyway. And I don't know how we would spend a bunch of money on promoting this to make it worthwhile. Sure, the businesses are going to make extra money and we'll get a little sales tax off of it, but it's going to take a long time to repay the dividends that we've spent into it.
Okay.
I have one more question.
Go ahead, Councilmember.
Actually, it's a clarification. Maybe Director Palmer can help me out with this, and I should have asked it while you're at the podium. I apologize, but I'd like some clarification on the timeline we're working on. So the resolution that we have for tonight is to bring back options for consideration next meeting. So we're still not, when is your vision, Director Palmer, or maybe somebody from the council can help me out, when is the vision that we will present to the public hard final numbers? I mean, are we just saying now tonight we're just eliminating more things and then we're going to continue to discuss it until what is your opinion on the final timeline for this?
Well, with the reporting requirements met, ARPA is finished. That deadline was December of 2024. With the pandemic relief, we had been talking all along that we would view this in the spirit of the ARPA funding requirements and the eligibility requirements that are still required and management partners did that very well in terms of how they were laying that out to the public and to the citizens in their surveys. So my thought, we don't have to live by it, but my thought was to live on the same time frame as 2024 for that guideline. And so that was my anticipation. Council can choose whatever that time frame is because we've already met the requirements.
Okay, that's what I thought. I wanted to make sure that I was not, missing something. But we are not on a hard timeline to spend this money. We are simply trying to, expedite it in the interest of public,
Well,
benefit
within the spirit of what the ARPA money
Correct.
was for, it was a
Yeah.
one-time
Understand.
money, so.
Thank you.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to include downtown improvements to the list of now 8, made by Councilmember Charbonneau, seconded by Deputy Mayor Sherlock. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Councilmember Clark, did you vote in affirmative? Okay. Motion carries 5-2 with Councilmembers Lakota and Griffin voting no. Okay, further amendments. Councilmember Villasenor, go ahead, please.
Yes, I would like to make a motion to bring for consideration a plan to size the needs for grants for local small businesses and nonprofit groups in accordance with number 1 on our list.
And I'm sorry, you want to,
So, right,
little
so, yeah, for clarification purposes, I don't believe we have a plan in place a process in place. Now, we've been working on the assumption that maybe we would use what we used for the CARES Act, but I would like the staff to be able to present and us vote on a specific plan on how we would size the need for making business grants for, what program are we going to use?
okay.
And then that way, I might as well just explain it all now. That way we can at least have an idea of what the need is. Because right now I think we're operating in this mode where there are a lot of assumptions here. And I think business grants for small businesses and nonprofits is something that we can size to a very detailed number. And I think that's the number I think we want to arrive to before we can say, hey, if it's $150,000 or if it's $650,000, we don't know. That's a big difference to me in my mind. So the program that I would like staff to be able to present is how are we going to size that? What is the process by which local businesses and local nonprofits can request pandemic relief funds?
Okay, so would you accurately describe your motion? And I don't want to put words in your mouth, I'm just trying to paraphrase it.
Okay.
As ask staff or direct staff to bring back a proposal for a business grant program using these pandemic relief funds.
That's correct.
Okay.
Sorry if I was long-winded about
You're
that.
fine. No, I wasn't clear, and I wanted to be clear. So the motion, and coming from Councilmember Villasenor, he concurs with this, is to direct staff to bring back a plan, a specific plan for a business grant program using the pandemic relief funds.
Right.
Okay.
Also include nonprofit groups as well.
Okay.
Nonprofit community groups.
Okay.
I don't want to leave them out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is
I'll,
there-
I'll second that.
Okay. All right. Motion by Councilmember Villasenor, seconded by Deputy Mayor Sherlock, to direct staff to bring back a specific plan for a business grant program, including the nonprofits, and we can talk about that and they'll capture that, using the pandemic relief funds. And Councilmember Villasenor, I'll let you speak to it if you need to add anything.
I will. I'll just round back to my initial comment earlier about why not both. I think that this money, to Director Palmer's point, is now the city's money and we can spend it on whatever timeline we want. And I think that as we're talking about these priorities on the list in front of us, time is more important, in my mind, to businesses who might be struggling, nonprofits who might be struggling, than some of the other pieces on this list, which I think we can push out into the future. So I'd like to get this, one moving in particular because I think time is more important for those organizations.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Sherlock, anything to add?
I'll just add that I've spoken to some business owners and managers in our community, and I've heard from them that this is something they would like to see also, so that they, kind of understand what it is they potentially would have access to, but also for staff's benefit. I had a really good conversation with the manager of Bishops, and she was suggesting in part of it, what would businesses, and this is just focusing on the business side, I do agree that the community group, potential community group nonprofit grants are also really important. We've heard really great public comment speaking to that. But just for the business part of it, she was expressing concern about businesses who receive this type of money. What are they gonna do differently to adapt to this new environment that we're in? So, maybe that's a question potentially on the application form, as far as, instead of just, and maybe not, it's just an idea of like how we're giving this money, but there's a discussion about, in this new environment of, we're hopefully coming out of this pandemic, how are you going to kind of adapt a little bit to utilize those funds the best for your business? Does that make sense?
Councilmember Clark? Okay.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Newing. So I have a couple of questions or concerns. So we have heard from businesses, and that a lot of them are struggling to find people to hire, right? I'm sure that's not just in Newcastle. So direct grants to businesses are not going to materialize new workers. I don't, if that's their biggest concern, then the money is not going to be well spent to that end, because it's just, it doesn't come with a worker, it's just money. Now, granted, like I mentioned before, that nobody's going to turn down money, especially a grant, right? I mean, I wouldn't, right? So everybody will say they need money, and certainly some of them probably do. But that brings me to my second point, is I'm not necessarily in favor, I've voiced my opposition to this item, but we don't have enough information to know how we would base these grants. So I am, by default, wanting to know more about what a grant application would look like, because it's hard to make a decision on this by just saying grants. It sounds like we're just going to pick the money tree, and it's not, obviously not what we're going to do. But there has to be, for me to be comfortable with this, and I'm not saying that I am at this point, I have to have a detailed understanding of what that people are going to have to ask for, provide, to show that they need this money. Because, by giving them money, we're taking money away from something else in the community. And, and in my opinion, businesses, yes, are important in our community, of course, but I place the people ahead of the businesses. And so I have to be super convinced that these businesses really need this money. And so, although I'm still not in favor of this, I do want to see what a grant application would look like. So I would be inclined to advance this, not saying that I'm going to approve it at the end, or I'm not going to vote, but I want to see that's a huge thing, right? I need to know what we're asking. If it's detailed and, you know, a business can genuinely show that this is vital to their existence, you know, that's one thing. But just having a couple things, do you need it, and having them say yes, that's different. That's a negative, obviously.
And that's exactly what this motion is to bring back a draft plan. Councilmember Charbonneau, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you could see the hand or if I should just like yell out. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate Councilmember Clark pointing that out. So this is the lines I'm doing this with as well. Again, and I want to remind folks in the audience, we're looking here to direct staff to come up with more details and present more details, and that's the lens I'm taking with it. So an affirmative vote here is not necessarily an affirmative vote for this is how the money is being spent. Just want to reiterate that. And I do have a few sticking points that I wanted to share, actually. So for me, I think planning for the long term as much as we can is critical here. And I think the reason I was really excited about sort of the economic development aspect and the downtown improvements, I think that does that really well. I am hesitant with a business grant. I know some of our businesses do need it, and I don't question the need, but the direct cash infusion, I think Deputy Mayor Shark was speaking to it, right? Does it give you, is it a sort of temporary boon and then back to, a business or a sort of a rate of return that's not going to fare well? I think labor is a huge issue as well, too. I think I'm very proud that we as a city, all the labor we support is, pretty unionized, I think done really well, especially saying that as a member of salary and benefits. Are we giving money towards a business that is not, maybe the reason they're having a labor shortage is because they're not offering what they need to offer employees. I feel that very passionately as someone that, for my first 3 months on council, I didn't have health insurance. It's not because I was being stubborn and not willing to work. It's just because these jobs need to start offering more for younger people, quite honestly. I think too, something I would like to know is I would like, if we're going to do this, for some of the money to go towards outreach, because it is very much the case, I believe, that the businesses that might need this the most might be spending more time working rather than going out to apply for the grant and being aware of said grant, and it might not be communities that we normally have outreach into. So I think that is really critical. I think the outreach component is something that is very important to me. The labor component is important here. All of these things, the sustainability, right? I understand it hurts us from fiscal sustainability if we have empty storefronts that aren't generating revenue. And again, it's not just about that, right? We want a vibrant community. We want those stores there, but I want to know if it is, sort of truly that make or break, all of those assumptions, all of those things, and can we do the outreach to get this to the people that sort of need it the most? So I am definitely interested in knowing more, but those are concerns that I have, and I would really like to address those as much as we can and learn more about those.
I have a question, Director Palmer. Can you tell me the likelihood of your team putting together a draft plan and presenting it? Is it doable? Do you need more information? I just want to make sure that when we walk out of here, we're not asking you to do something that you really can't accomplish.
I'm going to refer back to the CARES, okay? When we did the CARES grant, I was not involved with the selection. I wasn't involved with the amount of money. I wasn't involved with the questions or the way that the application was set up. It was a chamber function. It was a function with Rob Wyman, our previous city manager, and Christina also worked on that. I wanted to be independent from that selection process. I'd like to still be independent from that selection process. So to bring back a plan, I'm not sure what that plan would look like, because some of the questions are almost like political rather than, do they need the money or not need the money? They're very good questions. Some of these, like doing something different for health insurance, for example, or, questions like that. But I don't know how you'd fund or base your funding upon that new practice. So it becomes arbitrary to some extent, maybe based upon employees, maybe based upon the cost of health insurance, if that was the issue. I'm just not sure. There's a lot of different ways you could go about thinking about business grants. So I would like to still continue to maybe use a different approach in not having our staff do that, but rather than have some volunteers come together and decide on what kinds of things they would want to see in an application process, and what the business community is asking for. Those are kind of like questions that I think need to be brought forth in that manner rather than staff driving that question. So I don't really answer your question, but I know that I'm going to be on vacation next week for 2 weeks, and I come back, and then I'm going to be putting a budget together for 2023, and I won't have the time to do that. And we have just had some staff turnover ourselves, and so anyway, so this is not something I'd put together immediately.
And I see Director Arskethorpe wants to chime in, and also just to throw this out there as well, because maybe you can address it. Would this be better served if we enlist the chamber and a grant went to them for business grants? So I'll turn it over to Director Arskethorpe.
Well, thank you, and I don't mean to speak to what your intent with this may be, but maybe just to think outside the box a little bit, and this may be way out there. But, I'm thinking back about the successful downtowns that in cities that I've worked for, and what made them successful, what they did to promote their downtowns, to promote tourism. And, one of the first things that a successful downtown does is they do things to prove to would-be investors that the city itself is willing to invest in its downtown. So they do things that show some physical improvements, things that let, people that are trying to buy properties or to invest know that the city is actively doing something. So with that in mind, and getting to the grant idea, one thing that was very successful when I was in Park City, Utah, for example, we had matching grants. And those matching grants were based upon, some criteria that we gave to property owners to do certain things. They would then come back to us with their proposal. We would judge it, we would, score it to see, whether it met, our objectives. And so thinking of that, it could be that we offered a matching grants to businesses that they would make a proposal to us as to what they would do with that money. And not just perhaps how they're running their business, but what are they doing to actually create something more vibrant in the downtown? Can they do something to bring in, musicians? Is that part of it? Is it something to create some outdoor dining spaces? Is it something to create some funkiness? Signage. What would they propose to us that they would do that would not only help kind of get them over their budget issue, but to actually invest and create vibrancy in the downtown? Play equipment, facade renovations. The one thing I'm always reminding people of or pointing toward is how great the Avalon development turned out, and look at the signage that our new sign code resulted in. I mean, that signage reflects the architecture. It really creates, just a sense of cohesion. And so maybe, for example, we allow some facade changes, some signage changes to meet our new code. I don't know, but just different kinds of things that, they might do to show a physical and active difference in the downtown. So, just a way to think outside the box, to create a place that people do want to come. They know there's some activities going on, there's some funkiness there, so just my 2 bits.
That's exactly what I was thinking of, is a matching grant. And I've seen so many successful programs, especially when you're dealing with the business community or neighborhood groups. They just seem to take off pretty well. Director Palmer.
So I'm glad he said that, because that would not be staff-driven. That would be participation by the business community. It'd be more vibrant, it'd be more accepting. I have done something like that in other communities, and it's worked out really, really well to what he's speaking to.
Well, and just one more thing, we had in the Park City situation, we had our Historic Preservation Commission, judge and award the matching grant. Staff supported that, but we had our commission to help in the review of those applications. So it was just a fun annual thing that we did. The city set aside an amount with specified grants up to a certain amount, matching grant, and then see what proposals came in.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm glad I asked. Councilmember Charbonneau, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I have one point of clarification for Director Palmer, and then I have a couple of points I'd like to make as well. So Palmer, Don, if you'd like to respond right after, or if you just want me to go on, either way. But so are you suggesting, because I've seen other cities do this, you're suggesting there would be sort of like an ad hoc committee of folks, of potential citizens, to sort of take this on in terms of the business grant? Or are you suggesting a less formal structure than that? That's what I would like to know. And I can just keep going. This frankly changes a lot for me. I did not know this is the way that we were addressing this. I am not a fan of the chamber being the leader driving behind that, because it's not the most equitable space. Frankly, I would never have attended a chamber meeting if I wasn't running for city council, and that's not a knock on the chamber, but there's a financial barrier to entry. There's the opportunity cost to entry of having to have your lunches open and not working. There is, a lot of the folks that do attend those meetings are wealthier, or have a business interest. For folks like myself that worked in the nonprofit space or worked on a political job, I felt like an outsider, quite frankly. And you talked about sort of like cohesion and downtown and all that, but that doesn't address the problem I'm talking about of labor. That doesn't address the problem I'm talking about of these businesses that are going to be left out, because just having a group say like, these are the businesses we like, or these are the businesses that come to us. I'm sorry, I don't find that good enough. I don't like. We're not accurately addressing need in that way. So if that's the mechanism we have for addressing need, is again, not a knock on the chamber. I just think the structure of it, that's not the best way to address need. And there needs to be a better way to address need if I'm going to support this, quite frankly.
Councilmember Charbonneau, can I ask a different question then? How, you said if it's not the council, and what is it that you would propose? I mean,
I said I would never have attended a meeting just because of the work I do professionally if I hadn't run for council. That's what I was saying of the chamber.
Okay. My work was at Baker City, Oregon, where we had a tourism council, and they were actively already engaged. We do not have that at Newcastle, unfortunately. And so that's where I was piggybacking on with, Austinthorpe about that, because my experience with that was very active, and we had grants there as well. So that participation, this is a lot different. We're talking about a pandemic crisis that happened to our nation. So you're right. I don't know how we would get the money out immediately to the businesses in need, but I don't think staff driving that train is the answer. And I don't have a ready answer for you, because we don't have a ready program like other communities, like a tourism council that I mentioned earlier, or I don't know what Park City had.
I guess my point of clarification, Director, is I'm trying to understand what the mechanism would be, because I'm acknowledging that, right? We don't have, an economic development committee. We don't have a tourism thing. We don't have something like that. So you're suggesting the chamber, and I'm saying, again, not a knock on the chamber. I don't think it's the most equitable entity to determine how to distribute those funds. So just help me understand what the mechanism would be here, because this is a major sticking point for me.
It was actually, and City Manager Larson's going to jump in, but I threw the chamber out there as a resource right now. It was not etched in stone by any means. It wasn't Director Palmer. So City Manager Larson has a couple words. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, to the extent that you decide that you want to pursue this, there are some, I'll say, samples or best practices that might be out there or will be out there in the field for other cities that are going to be doing something similar to this. I allude to a couple of them I'm already familiar with, but I think there'll be others coming forth from other cities when they start making their decisions on the expenditure of these funds. And that could help guide this organization, as well as the council members, in deciding how you want to approach this. the structure itself is one thing, it's another issue as far as the criteria. I think there'll be some good examples out there for council to entertain, or at least to discuss and see which way you want to go with that.
Councilmember Lakota? Go ahead,
Yeah.
Councilmember Lakota.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, listening to this, I still don't, I haven't still heard, and I still don't see the process where there would be a thorough analysis or due diligence. So when we did the town hall, I know we spent thousands of dollars, citizens' dollars, so that we could understand from them what they want us to do with these funds. That was the whole reason, that was the main gist of the town hall. And from what I see as the results, the first priority when asked, 35% voted for fiscal sustainability, and I assume everybody would agree here, it's statistically significant. Second priority, what would it be? Citizens said, 33% said fiscal sustainability. This again is statistically significant. Third priority, when it was asked, 26% said fiscal sustainability. This was again statistically significant. These are the facts I'm saying. And as Councilmember Charbonneau pointed out, that there was a diverse member in the town hall. People from all ages showed up. So I don't know, do we completely defy what the citizens chose? Do we disregard their results? Do we completely disregard results of the majority? Looks like we're back to square one from where we started with these 9 options. And clearly the citizens have chosen one option 3-4 times when they were asked. So I'm still like, I'm confused as to, we're still going round in circles. Feels like if we are still not satisfied with the town hall decisions, I think let's put it on the ballot, just like we did with utility taxes, where 59% voted they did not want those utility taxes. So if you're still not satisfied, despite the statistical significance that was shown in the polling results, let's just choose 3 options and put it on the ballot, because it's very important. Again, these funds are not free funds. These are taxpayers' money. So as much as we should respect these funds, we should respect the decisions that was given by the majority in the town hall.
And Councilmember Griffin and Councilmember
Point of order.
Senior. Oh, Councilmember Charbonneau, state your point.
Sorry, I was waiting to let Councilmember Lakosha finish, but that would not be a legal thing to put on the ballot. It has to be a levy or a tax of some nature. Just a decision on funding would not be legal to put on the ballot. I respect the will of what you're saying, though. Getting citizen input, I absolutely agree. I'm just, from an election standpoint, that's would not be allowed.
Yeah, the point taken. Thank you. Councilmember Griffin, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor Newing. If we spend this money, and we're going to need it sometime shortly, and you don't want to hear about taxes, we probably will be asking the people to pay more taxes to take care of what we didn't take care of. It's our job to take care of the money in the city. And another point I'd like to ask is that early on, I'll tell you that Manager Wyman said that the businesses were expecting money out of the ARPA funds. Now, who told them that they were going to get money? Somebody must have, because otherwise I don't think they would expect it. We spent a lot of time trying to figure this out, and some of us say, well, it's revenue that we got, and the others say, no, this is one-time funds. Well, it is one-time funds, yes, but it was replacing revenues that we lost during the pandemic. And according to what we were just talking about, if we, number one, we need to know that the citizens really want this money, or would they be willing to take it if we offered it to them? I'm not sure that many of them would. Well, we saw one up there in the town hall that, she couldn't wait to get it. On the types of people we met when we went out talking to the business owners, there was only one business owner that said they were doing poorly and they expected that they were going to fold whether they got more money or not, that giving them more money would not save them. And so, you know, I think that if we set up a program where we make it pretty difficult to figure it out how to get the money to them if we're planning to give them money, then maybe we'll fix it to where they won't want it. So.
Councilmember Villasenor, go ahead, please.
Thank you. First of all, Rob Wyman isn't here anymore, so that's my first point. We here on this council have the responsibility. You said to take care of the money in the city, and this is me saying my values tell me that I need to figure out how businesses at this point could use this money should they need it. And that's what my motion was. It is a plan to get our arms around the need. If it's zero, that's awesome. I would love it to be zero. I would love every business to say, you know what, we're good. Let's move forward with this, but we're not spending all this money today. I mean, Director Palmer made that very clear that we're on as long a runway as we as a council want to be on. So if I'm saying let's size the problem. You know, then with the other piece, for downtown improvements, promoting tourism, we're sizing the problem. What does that spend look like? We don't have to spend. We can size it and then say, okay, let's spend a portion of it. This is not. I'm not by any means saying we need to unload all this money today. I want to know from our business community and give them an avenue, give them a pathway to say, I'm requesting money from the city so that my business can thrive in some way, shape, or form. Good ideas coming from Director Osgathorpe. I expect good ideas to come in as we continue to look at this. But when a plan gets presented, if we're on the proper timeline to present a plan in July, then great. Then we can look at that plan and we can talk about it some more. But this is not a let's cut loose the money right now. That's not what I'm saying at all. Again, I'm going to say it, why not both? Why can't we help people, and why can't we hold money back so that we can address bumps in the road and then continue to work through this list until such time as we as a governing body have decided how this money is spent. And to say, let's just put it on the ballot and let the people decide is, quite frankly, shirking your responsibility as a member of this council. So make a decision. And I'm ready to make a decision, and I'm ready to support our businesses, and this is a first step towards that.
All right, we do have a motion on the floor. And that is to direct staff to bring back a specific plan outlining a business grant program using pandemic relief fund. The motion was made by Councilmember Villasenor, seconded by Deputy Mayor Sherlock. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. 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 Opposed? No. All right, motion carries 4-3 with Council Members Griffin, Lakota, and Clark dissenting. All right. Any additional?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Clark, go ahead, please.
I make a motion to remove item 3, outdoor gathering areas, from the list.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Clark, seconded by Councilmember Griffin to remove outdoor gatherings from our list of options. Councilmember Clark, would you like to speak to your motion, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The reason I say this, that we need to remove this, is we have already some nice outdoor gathering areas. I've mentioned it before. We have Lake Bourne Park, we have Donegal Park, we have a lot of community parks. They all have brand new expensive signs too. And so they're easy to find. And we are getting a grant. We've already heard about a $500,000 grant for Lake Bourne, and we had already budgeted, or the previous council had budgeted over $1 million, I don't know the exact number, for Lake Bourne. So it doesn't make sense to me to spend any more money. We're already spending, we've already got, what is that, over $1.5 million for our flagship park, right? So what else, why would we spend more money when we're already addressing this issue? And even if we weren't, we do have enough outdoor gathering areas. The Commons has areas now. We've added areas out there for outdoor. We have, like I mentioned, parks. So I just think this is not something that should be getting our attention now. This is when we are, others have mentioned it, when we are facing economic headwinds, we would not look very smart to the citizens to be spending money on something that we've already budgeted money for and which is pretty good shape already. So I just think this item can be removed from the list and helps us whittle down. Thank you.
Councilmember Griffin, do you have anything to add?
No, I think we do very well.
Okay, anyone else? Deputy Mayor Sherlock, go ahead, please.
Thank you. So I am very much in favor of keeping this on the list for a few reasons. Going back to one of the slides that's on this presentation about the outreach that management partners did initially when we hired them to help us with this process to help make these decisions on how to invest this money. I believe it was over 400 people responded to, residents responded to a survey. And one of the top things on that, the results was the things that we lost in the pandemic was being able to gather. And we've found that, outdoor gathering spaces are really important. And for me, this line item is really talking about the places there's a couple at Lake Boren Park, I'm losing my words.
The stage.
The stage, well, I was actually talking about where people can rent out the covered spaces to have gatherings with community, birthday parties and sports team celebrations and just neighborhood gatherings. And that's where for me, this line item, what that means. Also, our stage at Lake Boren is in desperate need of repair. And if we have more of those spaces that are in good shape, this is actually another potential return on investment because the city would be able to rent out those spaces for events. And this is not on our list of what's happening at Lake Boren for the projects that are happening at Lake Boren. This is different from that. The $500,000 grant is specific to the plan that is already in the works. So it's focusing on these smaller areas that need attention, and again, kind of what Councilmember Charbonneau was saying about other line items. I don't see this as the higher end of this idea of how much to spend on it. It's more, again, assessing where the need is and how much that is and what can we do for the least amount of money that would be helpful to our community.
Councilmember Charbonneau, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was curious, I would like to know if the departure of our parks planner would have any impact on this. I'd also like to know, relative to the activity staff member we hired, would that afford us any ability to, if we were to make an investment like this, to sort of scale the frequency of events, or is this more of intended as a, hands-off thing where we just create, what it's talking about mostly here is seating capacity, at least in the agenda. What is the intent there? What is the potential impact there? I'd like to know more about that.
Director Bronze, could you speak to the potential impact of the departure of our parks planner?
Yeah. Excuse me. So I see that as a temporary situation. We are planning to advertise for that right away and get that restaffed. I do see that potentially pushing the project plan for construction this year to potentially next year. But I see this outdoor gatherings as completely separate and would be unaffected by that temporary departure.
Thank you. We'll let you save your voice. You have a long TIP presentation.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lacotia.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that the survey that we did by management partners, I know we spent thousands of dollars there, like what, $45,000 for this whole project. Anyways, the survey for the parks rated low. I don't have the exact numbers, but I think we can find it in our survey results. So park and outdoor spaces rated really low, so that was not a top choice that the citizens chose. So just FYI.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to remove outdoor gatherings from our list of potential investment areas, made by Councilmember Clark, seconded by Councilmember Griffin. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Nay. Nays have it 5-2.
Madam Mayor, point of clarification.
Just a moment, Councilmember Charbonneau. Go ahead, Councilmember Lakota. The motion was to remove the outdoor gatherings. We voted and it was a 5-2. City clerk, can you remind me of that? I never remember that process. We can definitely do that. Thank you for the solution. All right. Okay, the motion on the floor is to remove item number 3, outdoor gatherings, from our list of potential investment areas. All in favor, please say aye, or please raise your hand. Opposed? Councilmember Charbonneau, how do you vote? Okay. All right. Motion fails 3-4, with council members Clark, Griffin, and Lacotia voting in the affirmative. Okay, Councilmember Charbonneau, you had something before the vote had to be read.
Yeah, I would guess I'm requesting some direction for staff. I'm inclined to, I think just baseline, I'm inclined to include all of these because again, it's not a vote to spend the money this way, but of course I'm gonna want more information on all of these. Can I get please push back if that's, I would like to know if that's too heavy of a lift. I would like some clarification there because I'm inclined to, I'm still undecided about outdoor gathering areas. I'm still undecided about business grants, quite candidly, but I want to get more information. So I'm gonna vote to include that, but I would like pushback if that's too big of an ask. And I feel like I wanna call that out as we continue voting here.
So what I would recommend is, if you recall early in this conversation, it was a 7-0 vote to remove item number 9, city fleet and equipment. It was a 5-2 vote to add downtown improvements. And we talked about wayfinding signs and that type of thing to the list. So did you want to make a motion to?
No, I'm not making a motion. I'm asking staff to clarify if is there a certain number they're comfortable with in terms of bringing this back to us for July 18th? Because I'm inclined to get more information on all of them. And that's heavily steering my votes right now. And I don't want to be unfair to staff and ask them to bring all of these back.
Okay, Councilmember Villasenor, and then I'll go to Director Palmer.
Thank you, and I agree with Councilmember Charbonneau. I think that it was very clear that we wanted to remove city fleet and equipment because there was no need for it. The rest of these items, I think we should explore in size, and then we can vote on specific plans to appropriate money. But I think we need to, as a council, I think we need to understand what we want for the next meeting, which I think we might be there with two pieces. And if outdoor gatherings or if park things can wait till 2023, then okay. But I would, again, like to understand, like, well, I think we as a council need to say, these are the priority things we want to do. And if we focus on the priorities, we've already got 2 things that we've asked of staff for July 18th, which seems like, again, a lot. So if we don't remove other items, then we can maybe say, which of these can we push? Which of the next ones we want to address, and maybe we can make a process of that as we move forward to say, maybe we can build a planning calendar around these financial considerations that, maybe the city manager and his staff can help us say, we can handle 2 per month or 2 per quarter, or I don't, whatever staff can commit to, I'm happy to commit to. But that's what I think. I don't want to remove anything else, to echo Councilmember Charbonneau, but we're into sizing and understanding, and then we can debate the merits of each program to say, hey, if outdoor gatherings is X large, is X large fine, or can we debate it to where we're making appropriate use of the money. Again, I'm open to. This is where the good ideas start, not where we're not. This is not where the good ideas end. I think we're starting a journey here, and I think that at least that's where my head is.
Director Palmer, I know you're on vacation during our next meeting, and I wonder if it's more prudent to, National Night Out is the first meeting of August, to have this maybe a study session with some more detail at our second meeting in August.
Yeah, and also, July's out, but I've been texting Steve Toller with Management Partners during this process, and in the agenda bill was outlined from a memo that he provided to us, giving kind of an outline of what these things already are. And so it's in the agenda bill what you guys are asking about what it would look like. Also, he mentioned to me earlier about the business grant program, and that the city of Burien is actually looking at that same thing right now. So I think we would be able to do some things with management partners, but some of the criteria has already been laid out. So I'm not sure exactly what it is that council wants to see. I know that Steve's leaving August 1st, so there's some things that management partners would need to ask him about with regards to some of the aspects of these decisions that are still outstanding, which are now 8. So.
City Manager Larson, any recommendations?
Yes, to be candid, I believe staff would be of the desire to try to reduce the list, given the limited availability of funding throughout. And if that's not possible with council, then we would need to obviously further the discussion, perhaps in a workshop. With the 8 items that are here now, if the council continues with this will be a fairly lengthy process to go through these. And I'm not sure of the benefit of that, frankly, knowing that you have just, not much funding for this with the 8 items you have.
No, it's this is what our 8th or 9th meeting on this, and I feel like we're just not making any headway. I think a workshop would be ideal, maybe a half-day workshop.
Oh, okay, I'm overrun.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. With that, I would solicit management partners for that aspect of it, because I'm going to be knee-deep in budget.
Right, I understand that.
I second that notion from Director Palmer. We would need some support and assistance from a facilitator of sorts to get through this.
Okay.
Question, Madam Mayor?
Councilmember Clark, go ahead, please.
So, I was hoping personally that we would whittle this down. We heard earlier from Director Palmer that he's not going to be able to help with the business grants, and so we're asking the staff to provide more information when we've already heard that they're limited. I was really hoping we could cut some of this down tonight, Doesn't maybe seem like we're gonna do that. There is, you know, like Director Palmer said, there's a detailed explanation of every item that we've had available for quite some time. And even, let's say the staff had unlimited time, I don't know how they would come back and this detail would change, right? We'd have the same issue in a future meeting because they're trying to decide what we're looking for, and then they would just say, well, here's a bunch of information, and I wouldn't blame them because that's, you know, we have to make these decisions and have to say no to this and no to that, and maybe make a list of a couple things. I understand that some of these things require more information, right? I mean, I get that. So, summarizing everything I just said, I would probably be inclined to what the city manager just said, although I'm not keen on missing work, but I would be inclined to have a workshop that maybe we can, because we're going to be stuck with the same information, and so we're going to have to decide eventually, regardless of what we ask the staff to do. We're still going to have these debates, and we're going to have to decide. So, you know, we should probably move on for tonight and, you know, schedule something out in the future, you know. And I would like to see perhaps the Finance Committee, you know, could come up with some ideas for business grants, right? I mean, if considering that Director Palmer's team might be busy, maybe the Finance Committee could come up with a list of items, you know, and bring it back to us. That would be one way to get around one of these issues, perhaps. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Director Arscathorpe, go ahead, please.
Thank you. You know, as we're talking here, I'm thinking back about my comments a few minutes ago about, you know, the business grants. And I realized in talking about some of these things, there appears to be some overlap here. And I'm just wondering to what degree some of these might be consolidated, if you have appetite for that. For example, you know, the business grant, it occurred to me that really was related to what I was talking about, number 6. Promoting tourism, you know, the downtown improvements, promote tourism. Could that be, you know, some common link there? And that also appears to me to be part of number 4, economic development marketing, at least for the downtown. So I'm just wondering if there's maybe some, and not to minimize what your individual thoughts were for these. I know you had specific things in mind, but, you know, for me, just kind of looking at this, I'm just wondering if there's a way to hit the sweet spots by consolidating some of these and better defining what a packaged, you know, proposal might look like, and it would narrow it down to something more definable, if that's the right word.
Yeah, I've mentioned that in the past as well, because I believe item number 5, the technical assistance for small business, could become part of that as well. You know, when you look at a program like Shoreline and I believe Kenmore have created, they've done some really good things with their business community. And I do believe there's some overlap, whether it be, you know, like a major, obvious, knock you off your feet overlap, or yes, we can tie it together overlap. So
one thing that I think is worth at least identifying here, and I've realized as I've listened to your conversation about outdoor gatherings, that most of that emphasis appears to be on park improvements and whatnot. When I first saw this, I was thinking, you know, plazas and whatnot in the downtown. I do want to mention that our downtown design standards, development standards, as redevelopment occurs, will create outdoor gathering spaces in that context. And that's not to minimize, you know, what your objectives are for the parks, but just so that we're aware that there's that secondary, you know, outdoor gathering thing that will occur if we can incentivize downtown redevelopment. Those things will be part of the package deal.
yeah, that would definitely be a wonderful thing to get something generated downtown. All right, Councilmember Charbonneau.
Thank you. So I feel like we've had this conversation multiple times about some of these have, you know, carryover, overlap here and there. Again, I guess I feel like I didn't really get a ton of clarity because, again, I would be inclined in a perfect world to get more information on all these. I would push back and say, I think there's a ton more information that could come for each of these. I think it's what we've been presented with each time. It hasn't been more added information. I think that's an important distinction because I didn't know until tonight that the business grants might be distributed by the Chamber of Commerce. That's new information. If we send it, we get more information. So can staff give me a number of what they would like to see it whittled down to?
Well-
If we want to get to tonight, or if there's not more action tonight, can we get a workshop on the books?
I
I'd like
think
to-
what we need to do is I'll talk with City Manager Larson. We'll come up with some options and get something on the books, whether it be a special meeting. You know, Councilmember Clark expressed concern about missing work, but maybe we do a 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. meeting or something to that effect. A special meeting where this is the only topic. Maybe we do some kind of a half-day workshop. So I'll chat with him.
So no further action tonight?
I don't think, I mean, I don't think there's any more motions. It seems like there's a consensus among the council watching them. I don't know how much you can see, so I apologize for that. I just feel like we're back to the wheel spinning. Is there anyone who feels differently?
Well, we were going to narrow it down to about 4 tonight, and we didn't get that done. We hired management partners to keep us
Okay.
out of trouble with the feds. And then it was switched to where we did this survey. We didn't like the
Okay.
survey that we got.
Yeah, and we don't need to rehash all of that,
Well,
in the essence of time.
Well, I think that before we ask management partners to go and do a lot of other things for us, we ought to kind of understand what the charges are going to be, because I'm sure that the 44,000 doesn't cover what we've already spent with the surveys and what have you. So we just keep spending. Next thing you know, we'll be at 150,000 into management partners, and they'll like that really well, but that doesn't do us any good.
Okay, so I think we've really covered this topic as best as we can tonight. Councilmember Charbonneau, your hand is still up, yes? I'd like to move.
Wait, I just wanted to, yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay. All right. Moving on, find my agenda. We are to item 11.2, draft 2023-2028 six-year transportation improvement program. And this is Director Braun's thunder for this evening, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a moment while I manage the technology here.
And council, we will go ahead and let Director Braun go through his presentation, and we'll field questions at the end.
Okay, I'll try in the interest of time to not dwell too much, but feel free to stop me if we have questions. Just what we're going to talk about. And we have a lot of new members on council. This is your first time going through the TIP. It's a transportation planning document as opposed to a budget document. It's required by state law. We have to update it annually in June. And it's also a requirement of grant funding. Typically, most grants, if your project is not listed on the TIP, then it's not eligible. And it's I already said update it anyway. Now, you can't update it as much as you want. So let's say some unique grant comes out and a project's not listed on the TIP, we can just bring it back and update it. So it's not like the comp plan where you have a restricted update frequency. So we have had a lot of discussion on the CIP in transportation recently, most of that before you were on council, but here's just a brief update. The biggest improvement or biggest deliverable was an updated transportation master plan in 2020. And that went through and updated the priority and the project costs for the 20, and just distinguish the CFP, the Capital Facilities Appendix. That's our long-range 20-year list of transportation improvement projects, versus tonight we're talking about the 6-year planning horizon. And then last year's TIP was adopted on July 6th. All right, so let me see if I can move Councilmember Charbonneau over here. So this is the TIP that's in your packet, and added color shading to indicate whether a project is new, meaning brought into the 6-year planning horizon. It's not new to the city. These all are being sourced from the 20-year plan. Blue indicates we've made a schedule change, moved it either up or back, and then a orange shading means that the funding has changed. And I'll go into each of these in more detail. I'll move Paul back. So first, we added a project, and this is the T57 Southeast 76 non-motorized improvements. And it's phase 1, which goes from, right now there's a patchwork of sidewalk on 76, and the rest of it has no sidewalk. And this would close those 2 gaps from 116th to 113th, and I'll go into that. Here's the project location on the west portion of the city. And the 2 gaps are those green circles there. This is on the south side of 76th. And one of the benefits, in addition to eliminating those gaps, is there's 2 new recent developments that are just becoming occupied now, the Enclave and Hazelwood Garden, otherwise known as Rhodey Ridge. And those are in purple and blue there on the screen. And so this would, and with those 2 developments, it created a new connection from Southeast 80th Street to 113th, where my cursor there is moving. And so this would create a new, not only would create a new pedestrian connection up through 76th, then it would create a new sidewalk route to school to 116th. It also creates a nice loop for those new residents. So it's just under a mile to create that loop, and it'd all be sidewalk. Another project, so this is not a new project, but it is brought onto the 6-year planning horizon. And this is the signalization on Coal Creek Parkway at the private street across from Tapatio. We presented analysis to the council right before we shut down for COVID, a couple different alternatives. And that's through this on here that a thought was that this could potentially benefit both the public in terms of a safety improvement as well as a business improvement by providing a safe connection, as well as potentially promoting easier access to those businesses on the east side of Coal Creek Parkway. And it was the highest ranking public improvement or public realm project in the downtown plan. And just a refresher, these are the 2, there's 4 alternative study, but these were the 2 that were received the most favor. And the image on the left there, the 2 roads are not aligned, the driveway out of the Safeway on the west and the private road on the east. And you can signalize them, but it's not as efficient because of opposing left turns. The other option, which of course costs more money, is to realign the intersections. So just a thought to put those in there. We added those from year 6 of the TIP, so it's not going to be coming up for any funding anytime soon, but just wanted to throw out the potential option for ARPA funding for this project. So now to the changes. These are the scheduling changes that were highlighted in blue. T40, and I'll go into these each in detail, so might as well just go into those now. So this year we're constructing T47, which is the May Creek non-motorized improvements from downhill of 116th, coming up to 116th, and then from 116th all the way to Wintry, which is 121st. And that easterly edge of that project limit is here in purple. Also being constructed this summer are the May Creek assemblage improvements around the hairpin turn, where they're constructing a new roundabout as well as a connection up to Coddington. And so that's and that they are creating a non-motorized pathway on the north side of May Creek Park Drive, and that's shown there in purple, just below Councilmember Charbonneau. And so we had planned this project in the previous TIP for a few years out, so maybe 2025, 2026. And so we're proposing just to move that up a little bit to take advantage of the not only the developments on the west, but also in the east, and just close this gap. And let's see, I'm sorry, I didn't cover the other 2. One project we pushed back a year, which is the project on at Newcastle Elementary that was brought forward to widen the roadway to eliminate some not eliminate, but to better manage some congestion. And staff did some striping changes right before the COVID shutdown, and those seem to be working, but we committed to evaluating those, and with the current school schedules and change of traffic patterns, we wanted to just continue to push that off to study that further before we commit to spending real money to either design or construct it. And another project we pushed back a year is T54, which is a signalization improvement at Newcastle Way and Newcastle Golf Club Road. The intersection, the only time it has a failure is in the PM peak, and that is from traffic going west and then south. And frankly, putting in a signal there would just, it acts as a, the stop sign acts as a metering right now. And if you had a signal, people would just get to Coal Creek Parkway faster. So there is, yes, there's a need, but I don't see any impact in delaying it further. So we talked about that one. And then one funding change. In the previous year, we've had a cycle now where every other year we have a larger overlay project, and in between years we kind of focus on smaller maintenance work or crack sealing or patching. And that schedule got disrupted a little bit. We were successful in being awarded a federal grant for 2024, and we normally would have done our large overlay in 2023. So we wound up having on our budget cycle 2 years of lower funding. Also, if you recall, a few months ago we presented the findings of our updated pavement condition survey, which showed that we need to spend more money to preserve our pavement, to maintain our current index. And one of the questions posed at that presentation was back to council, what, in terms of policy, do you want to keep the funding the same and then have our pavement condition drop, or maintain the current pavement condition and then spend a higher dollar amount, or something in between? And basically we deferred that discussion. And one of the things I'd like to do as a stopgap is to increase the funding for 2023, have a planned overlay, not quite as large as normal, but much more so than our maintenance years. And then in 2023, we also have a citywide pavement condition index, and that will give us a much broader picture of where we are. One of the challenges that prior to, we had a previous entity that performed our pavement condition index, and then we had this current company we've been working for, and there's been some disconnect with the numbers. And with the 2023 survey, we'll now have 3 completed surveys by this firm, and 3 points give you much direct line, 2 points do not. So I'm much more comfortable that with the 2023 survey that we'll have more consistent aging of our pavement, and that would be a more robust time to have that long-term policy discussion. So with that, the kind of kick the can a little bit down the road for looking at the 6-year funding. We pretty much kept it where we had it planned. We made some adjustments. Let's see, did I get into there? No, I'll get back to that. But we did increase our funding for 2024 for that federal project I mentioned. And then we just last week the ink is not dry, but we are recommended for approval for a $900,000 federal grant for 2026 for our pavement overlay. So that increased our expenditure on our TIP forecast. So the grand total, the current adopted 6-year TIP was $11.6 million. And when I say 6-year deficit, there's a forecast between the REIT revenue, the traffic impact fees, and potential grants. So when you add up the 6 years of potential planned funding, we were short a little bit there. And then with the current TIP, we're up to $16.1 million. And there's a significant increase in the transportation impact fee revenue. So that flips even though we're spending quite a bit more for planned, I keep saying spending, I want to just reiterate that this is a planning document, that nothing discussed tonight or when the TIP is adopted at the next meeting doesn't commit any funding or any projects. That would then go into the budget. Even when the budget's adopted, it still does not commit a project. Even when you award a construction project, all the contracts have a clause that the city can get out of the contract if it's for the public benefit. So even if you award a construction contract, you can still get out of it. So until the asphalt is paved, you haven't committed the money. So backing that up, this is just a planning document. So when I refer to spending, I'm talking about planned spending. So that compared last year's adopted to this year's proposed, the expenditures are up 38%, which is a huge number. Roughly half of that number is just inflation. And I've got a slide on that. I should, yeah, here we go. Oh, and I'll move. So these are just 2 excerpts. The upper one on the right is the Mortenson cost index for Seattle, and it shows an increase of 21.8% year over year for construction costs. And then just in today's Daily Journal of Commerce, this picture up in the top is the one down there on the bottom left, shows that their month over month is 2.3% increase. So it's still a challenge. So if you look at some of the projects from the 2022 to the 2023 TIP, you'll see significant increase on the project costs. Then some assumed grants. I mentioned the 2 federal grants, the one in 2024, the one in 2026. And then the school district project on Newcastle Elementary I referred to, we have a, I say commitment, it was a discussion at a joint board meeting that they would fund half of that project. And then projects we've identified for grants to pursue, which is a term meaning we don't have any adopted grants, but those ones we're going to target are the T44, which is the signalization project on Coal Creek Parkway, the T55 and the T54 projects. Those are the signalization at Coal Creek Parkway, Newcastle Way and Golf Club Road. And I forgot what the other one is, I'm sorry. I will just move forward because those are, we have a challenge in getting grants in Newcastle for transportation because we don't have a bunch of collisions and we're not building warehouses and we're not building new streets to distribution centers. And those are the two areas where you have a lot of competitive scoring for transportation money, is if you're either improving capacity, providing access to new business, or solving a safety problem. So I guess it's a good thing that we don't have a lot of collisions, but it jeopardizes our competitiveness for grants. Let's see, there we go. So this is time for council discussion on what we've discussed tonight.
Thank you, Director Braun.
Sorry if I ran through that quickly.
No, nice job. Any questions? Councilmember Clark, go ahead, please.
I have no questions. I'm impressed, Director Bronze. Thank you. I have no objections to what you did, so I will move this right along and make a motion to staff to prepare. Oh, okay.
I apologize, I hit that button and it didn't turn on.
All right, well, then I'll stop
But I will
with,
definitely come back to you. I actually have a couple of
Sure.
questions, but I see Councilmember Charbonneau's hand raised, so
I'll stop with good
I
job.
can't keep up with Councilmember Charbonneau. He's moving all over the screen, but I thank him very much for his helping with the pointing, or right below and pointing down. Very helpful, Councilmember.
Just trying to have fun with it. Yeah, I just had a question. Yeah, thank you, Jeff, for all of this. I had a question. I apologize if I missed it. You talked about the ARPA funding for the Coal Creek signals and sort of the couple different options there. One, do we know how much that would cost? Two, what would be the best way, like procedurally, to direct staff to like bring them back? I mean, the way you talked about it, it seems like we kind of already know, so maybe it's not a ton of work, but like procedurally, if we were interested in that, because to put it lightly, I am like super interested in that. That's one of the number one things we hear from people is the traffic signal there or something of that nature there, and I think that would make a lot of sense. So this is me expressing my interest and wanting more information.
Sure, I can answer that quickly. At least initially, the cost estimate escalated for 2022 to do the option 3, which is the signalization but not aligning the two streets, is $1.25 million. So that's the cost of that. So the cost is known. The construction cost for realigning the streets, which involves building a large retaining wall, that's about $2.7 million, if I recall correctly. So the costs are known. And then in terms of the schedule, sometimes we'll bring projects into the 6-year planning horizon just to kind of stimulate or start the discussion. But that could, in terms of directing staff, I think just having it be on the TIP, and I think it's a separate discussion for ARPA. I was just more throwing that out there as a potential suggestion, since it does combine transportation safety as well as the business improvement, or business support rather. But I would think that would be a separate discussion along the lines of what the previous agenda item, and it wouldn't necessarily, how it's funded doesn't have to be part of this discussion. Did that make sense?
All right. Oh, Deputy Mayor Sherlock, go ahead.
Sorry, so just what I am hearing is we're talking about whether or not we want these projects on this planning document. And that's what we're discussing tonight. And then
Correct.
when we get into actual budget discussions is how we talk about whether we want to fund or not fund them in the future. Is that correct?
Correct, and thank you. I went to the next slide here. So the process would be, we adopt this planning document at your next meeting. We conduct a public hearing as part of that process. And then we would, the next step would be to then, what is adopted on the 6-year TIP would be what goes forward in the capital budget. And council is certainly at their prerogative to change that. But what oftentimes happens in the budget process is by the time we get to capital, there's a little bit of fatigue after discussing the operating. And so this gives an ample time or more time to discuss capital, not only just in transportation, we're planning to discuss parks and stormwater at the next council meeting. There's no legislative requirement to have a 6-year planning document for those two programs. But as you'll see at the next meeting, I format that in the same table that's familiar for discussion purposes. And again, to have more casual discussion in the summer and then bring those forward to the capital budget.
Director Bronze, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So T53, the elementary, Newcastle Elementary, you mentioned you wanted to do one more year of studying traffic flow, and I totally understand that, but I really want to make sure those kids are safe. Could we maybe review that after you conduct the beginning of school until holiday break?
Sure,
Maybe
sure.
that few month period, and maybe there'll be a significant lean one way or the other. And, you know, the cost for us continues to rise, as you mentioned,
Right.
2.3% every month, but also the school district is partnering and they have a budget as well they want to retain. So,
Correct,
maybe we
correct.
can
Sure.
keep that on the horizon.
Certainly. And just to clarify,
yeah.
Mayor, on that point, the goal of that project is to address the traffic congestion, not necessarily the safety of the students. I mean,
Okay.
they're in the
Yeah.
cars, but the students, we've got a nice separated sidewalk there. So the goal of this is to address all the stacking and the impact on the neighborhood as opposed to a pedestrian safety.
Okay, all right. And do you see the potential signal at the private road in Coal Creek maybe moving up on the regional funding spectrum, knowing that it would feed a couple of shopping centers?
When you say regional, there's the federal grant that we just received for pavement maintenance. There's regional funding where those are, well, to answer your question, no, I do not see that being competitive regionally. But when I say regionally, that's a bucket of funds that are your large HOV projects on I-5 or an extension to a link light rail project. So very regionally significant. Coal Creek Parkway, when that was widened, that would be a regionally significant project, that kind of magnitude. But this one I don't see rising to regional, but it may be competitive in the countywide, which is the project that is more focused on cities' plans, in that it's in an adopted downtown study. It's the top ranking public realm improvement. We could potentially show that it has a private funding component to it if we get the property owners on either side of business owners to chip in some money. So that is some of the competitiveness, showing you have a mixed color of funding coming into the project. So it could compete in that.
And that's what I
venue.
was referring to, the countywide.
Sure, yes.
Yeah, so thank you for that.
Mhm.
All right, and Councilmember Clark, although I thank you very much for jumping on this and wanting to make a motion, City Clerk White reminded me that we don't need a motion because it'll come back on the 5th for a public hearing. So if you want to just hold that motion for a couple of weeks. All right, thank you. Thank you,
Okay,
Director Bronze.
thank you.
Okay, moving on, item number 11.3. And this is consideration of a regional coalition for housing tenant protection resolution. Director Osgothorpe, I'll turn this over to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I hope I can correctly just kind of introduce this item tonight, and my introduction to this will be brief. And I first want to apologize for any failures on my part in trying to pull this together. There's been, I think, some maybe misunderstandings. I think this also goes back to conversations that began with myself and Rob, and we kind of lost something in transition with Rob Wyman leaving, our former city manager. So I'm hoping that I can correctly kind of recite to you where we're at with this item. You may recall that you received individually, I believe, as council members, a letter back dated April 20th, 2022 from Arch. And this was actually from the executive board chair and executive director that pertained to concerns expressed and discussed at the Arch executive board regarding, you know, the critical issue of rising rents. I mean, this has been an issue that we've seen coming. There has been, you know, the COVID issue. There's been the moratorium and a lot of impacts on landlords with that, and with that moratorium lifted, concerns that now, you know, they're going to try to catch up with things that they weren't able to do under the moratorium as far as rent increases and dealing with maybe particular landlord-tenant issues. So what Arch had put together was this resolution that was to go to member cities describing what Arch Executive Board hoped that the member cities would consider in terms of adopting tenant protection provisions in our local codes. And specifically, those were 3 items. One was to require landlords in most cases to provide a minimum of 120 days written notice of rent increases greater than 3% and 180 days notice of rent increase greater than 10%. B was to establish a cap on fees for late rental payments of at 1.5% of tenants' monthly rate. And finally, C, to establish a cap in most cases on move-in fees and security deposits of no more than 1 month's rent and allow tenants to pay in installments. With this letter out, I learned from Rob Wyman that there was interest by 1, perhaps 2 council members that they would like to make a motion to put this onto our work program, to come back with some recommendations on this, perhaps an ordinance to affect these things. Normally, you know, when a motion occurs, it's by 1 council member in a meeting that makes the motion, and then if it's seconded, you know, it gets put on the planning calendar, and then we decide when can we put this on the work on your agenda, if you will. But knowing that we already had this letter from Arch out, you know, in conversation with Rob, we decided, well, it might be convenient and helpful to the person making the motion just to have this background information in hand so that, you know, it might help facilitate that discussion. What we inadvertently did was actually create this as an agenda item, and I don't think that was our intent, but that's where we ended up. So this is where the confusion, I think, really kind of came to bear, is that the way I had drafted the agenda, Bill, for this was that, you know, it would introduce this thing and suggest that if you want to further discuss this, make a motion to put it on the next meeting. Well, that raised concerns about the timing, and so we thought, well, it already is on the agenda, so that's sort of redundant. We don't need to do that. I forgot to change the agenda, Bill, to that effect, and that's my fault. I own that. What is before you tonight is on the agenda, and it's an opportunity for, you know, if a council member wants to make a motion to direct staff to do something with this, then that'll be council members' opportunity to make that motion. And I'm not going to pretend to suggest what that should be or dictate, you know, how strong Arch does or doesn't support this. Arch certainly has the support. If you want to go forward with this, they actually have a draft ordinance that you could springboard from. I will mention that, you know, it's a little unclear about the timing, because depending on what motion is made and whether you strictly follow the Arch recommended provisions, or whether you add more to those provisions, you know, that can affect, you know, how much additional research and timing may be needed. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I'll certainly answer questions if you have any.
So I'm going to ask if our city attorney, Mr. Chambers, has anything to add.
The one thing that I will add, and, you know, I obviously will not take part in any discussions on motions or seconds that are done, but when dealing with adopting an ordinance related to the use and restrictions of private property, mainly rental housing and tenant protections, I would need to review the ordinance before the proposed ordinance that was going to be adopted beforehand, and then would like to hold an executive session with the council to go over any risks of the adoption or not. So just keep that in mind, that would be my request and recommendation, to have a legal review of the proposed ordinance, whether it was only to adopt the 3 Arch proposals or the three arch and additional, or whatever form it comes in. I would like the opportunity to do the research, go into executive session with y'all, and give my legal recommendation and analysis on any risks that you may come about from adopting these tenant protections.
Thank you. All right, Councilmember Charbonneau, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this will be long-winded. This has candidly been my baby. I've been working on this for 2 months here. I do think there is a mountain of missing context here. I have not seen, quite frankly, our city staff present an ordinance that I think more unfairly. I don't say that to attack any one person. I think there's a lot of critical information missing here. I'm going to try to recreate some of that. I'm going to tell you where I'm coming from with this, and I'm going to go over this because I haven't had the time to go in depth on this with some of you. You know, I'm trying my best. I work in 50 plus hours, and it's important. It absolutely is important, and it's critical that we give this its due time. So I came to Rob Wyman with this over about 2 months ago. He had told me that, hey, staff were already talking about it. The cleanest way to move this forward was to put it on the planning calendar. So I want to acknowledge for council members here too, the process that we'd be looking at is to send this for more consideration. We would send this, if approved, we would send this to our staff. There would also be an additional public hearing, which I think is really important. I would want to point out too, if there is a public hearing, it should be held during non-9 to 5 hours because tenants are much more likely to work during those hours or have to worry about childcare during those hours. And it would come back again for another vote. And I'll get more to the staff time that would come from that, but I think it's important I would ask my fellow council members to extend grace in that, right? If we all want more information on this, we all want more data on the impacts, and we all want, I would argue, people to be able to weigh in on this. Quite frankly, I had folks lined up to come speak, and because this sort of the unfortunate situation of our community development director not getting back until Monday and letting me know that because the way this was drafted of your options are no action, option A, or no action, option B, I had to tell those folks to not come tonight. And there were a lot of compelling stories there. I wanted you to hear from Natalia, who is in, grew up here, her parents still live in Wintry, and she moved back here as a professional with her young daughter as a single mother because she wanted help with childcare. She doesn't think she can continue living here because of her rent increases in the Newcastle Commons. I wanted to tell you about Alicia Gutierrez, who actually rents part of a house, who I went to high school with and is now a paraeducator at Newport High School. I wanted to tell you about Matt Dirks, who approached me on a campaign trail and was really passionate about this issue, lives in Newport Hills. And I want to tell you about Daniel and Abby and Pin and a couple of our local business owners that came up to me and talked to me at the town hall that are not able to be here tonight. So I'd ask that you consider them when we talk about whether to move this forward or not. Now, I have worked incredibly hard on this. There, I believe, is a false equivalency presented forward to us in this ordinance. It talks about, first and foremost, I met with Arch, I've talked with Arch, I've asked multiple questions of Arch this process. It says that their position is that they would encourage council to consider this. That is the political posturing stance they need to take. They are ready to work on this. They have a draft ordinance for us. They are ready to go in and work on this. We pay into this program. They will happily work on this. But the stance they have to take officially is that they want folks to consider it. They're ready to do it. They've already started doing it with multiple other cities. So I'm not just saying that and misrepresenting their position anyway. They've already been doing this with multiple other cities. The copy and paste letters you've been getting from Windermere, from Bellevue Chamber, from these different realtor and real estate interests, they are quite literally that. They are copy and paste letters they've been sending to every city. And the reason they're sending them to every city is because a lot of other cities are considering this right now. And many have passed it, and many have it on their agenda. And they're doing that because it is critical indeed. Because we have an affordable housing crisis. And if you can't provide more affordable housing, which most cities just frankly can't in the short term, what you need to do is to make sure the people that at the lowest level, the tenants, are not getting screwed over. I spent time fighting 405 traffic to go meet. I have the mayors of Bothell, Kenmore, Woodinville, who've worked on this, all agreed to share their sort of perspective. Their folks are happy to share. Council members from Issaquah, Redmond, Kirkland, Kent, councils of bigger cities than us, equal-sized cities smaller than us, that have all worked on this, that have all passed it, are in the process of bringing it forward. There's data out there. They're willing to copy that. They're willing to help. There's an organization willing to help us. There are all of these cities willing to help us, and we can move forward that way. The way this ordinance is presented is that there's some equal level of consideration from these real estate interests that sent a letter with no data, with a lot of bold claims and vague claims about tenants, relative to this local organization that has a lot of data that all these other cities. Issaquah was looking at this earlier this week. They interviewed a ton of landlords. The price of housing in Issaquah and Newcastle is not radically different. We can pull that data right away. We can use it. There's a lot of tools for us here, and that is not being brought forward. Arch would be happy to do this, and that is not being mentioned. These interests are going to send a letter because, of course, they're going to send a letter because it affects their sort of business a little bit. But that's not this is a false equivalency in so many ways, and I cannot state that enough. We have, as a city, for 28 years, paid the absolute minimum mandated to affordable housing. If we can't take those affordable housing measures, we have to take steps to protect tenants. There's a reason this topic is hot right now. I am the first tenant we have ever had sit here on this council represented. That is not a coincidence. If you think that is a coincidence, your head is in the sand. These policies have been made by people that are homeowners, and they are not facing the same situation that people like me are facing. It is so hard for people like me to even get here. This is a critical issue to address. It is not being addressed, and it is finally being addressed because so many cities are realizing they absolutely have to. Now, staff time, I understand that as a concern. We have all these cities' data willing to help us. We have an organization willing to help us. I had more data I was willing to even give Steve and asking if he needed more, and he said he didn't, and he presented us with the short tenant things. I have a couple other ones that I think are really good that are copy and paste from other places that we could plug in as well. So when it comes to staff time, reaching out months in advance, offering all my time, using my own time after work to go and meet with these folks and get the agreement and to get Arch willing to help us, I think this is something is of critical need to address right now. I think it's something that we should have more data on brought forward. It's something that should be brought to a public hearing. It's something that should really, really, really strongly merit consideration for a lot of different reasons. Thank you for bearing with me on that. I would love, hit me with some questions. I'm ready. I've studied this. I'm here to talk about this.
Councilmember Clark, go ahead, please.
Okay, I'll hit you first. How about that? So a couple of questions come to mind, and for the public record, Councilmember Charbonneau and I discussed in an email a couple of these questions already, but so there's a lot of landlords that are large businesses, hedge funds, and so on, right? And of course they want to protect their bottom line, but there's a number in our area, all across our area, that are small, small businesses, right? There's families that have 1, 2 to 5 units, and we also have now we're facing legislation where there's going to be an increase in auxiliary dwelling units, which would probably fall under this. So you've got maybe an elderly person relying on the rent maybe from an ADU and these small businesses. My concern is, and this is my first question, I have another, but my first question then would be this, giving additional tenant protections such as a 6-month notice and things like that, that's going to really impact a mom and pop rental outfit or an ADU, person. So what is your, and the second question, I'll answer at the same time, is I'm not completely sure what you're asking us to bring forward. You're asking us to bring forward just a discussion, I assume, on this topic in more detail, but to the first question about small businesses, and the second question, what is your, overall desire for outcome for tonight?
Yes, thank you for that. So I'll address the second one first, actually. So the idea here is if we approve this, it can come back to staff with all those resources I mentioned to come present to us, to have a public hearing on, and then to vote. We would get to vote on it again to approve it. So that's why I was asking folks to extend grace there, because I believe it deserves that grace to come back to us. In terms of ADUs, so the ADU bills in the legislature this year did not pass, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were brought back again. I would be interested in ADUs in Newcastle specifically because they help a lot of folks that are longtime residents, right? They worry about folks out of King County assessor, how much those rates are jumped. They help a lot of those folks to be able to stay in Newcastle, exactly, right? Of course, that's not, there's some concession there, right? Of, you have the sort of dwelling unit as a part of your property, but it helps a lot of folks honestly be able to stay in Newcastle with the rising property taxes. So I would be open to excluding ADUs from these sort of tenant protections that we have here. I think it definitely merits conversation. I don't know what the approach staff would have taken by default was, quite frankly. So I was waiting to see what they would go for with that. But yeah, I it's very true. Treating a Newcastle Commons differently from folks that are having an accessory dwelling unit, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I would absolutely be willing to talk more there. I'm hesitant to, hard commit because I do want some more of that specificity, right? And I do want some more of those details, but yeah, I'm absolutely open to that. And what we're considering is these 3 tenant protections that are put forth. And I have a couple other ones if folks are potentially amenable to it, but I don't want to present those and amend things to have things then be tanked because of those, although they're much lighter than those 3.
So I have one follow-up question, thank you. So you're saying that you're limiting your request to the 3 items already on the agenda, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's what's in the ordinance. I have a couple other ones, and I asked Steve if we could bring it back at another time, and he but he told me essentially not really. So I have a couple amendments I can make, but I wanted to answer questions before I got into those 2 amendments of the very long-winded statement I had before.
Thank you.
I don't see anything, I'll go ahead and speak. My preference to address this item tonight would be to direct our city manager and city attorney to dig into the ordinance and review it and come back with informed information that can help council make a valuable decision in addressing this. I don't feel comfortable approving anything our city attorney hasn't reviewed and blessed.
But respectfully, Madam Mayor, isn't that part of this? If we approve this, that they would review it?
The ordinances usually originate in our city attorney's office.
Well, yeah, if we're sending this to be worked on, wouldn't both those entities you just mentioned review this?
Yeah, so I understand, I guess, the ask from Councilmember Charbonneau tonight would be a motion to direct staff to present an ordinance adopting the ARCH tenant improvement protections and holding a public hearing on it. That's what I've heard the ask be. If that's the case, then we would absolutely do legal review of, if there's a draft ARCH ordinance out there, a form ordinance out there, I'm happy to look at that and review it, right? It's already created by a known entity, and so that would significantly reduce time, or at least legal review. But yeah, part of the process would absolutely be working with the city manager and staff to present something that we believe the city can pass, and then hold an executive session on it to discuss risk.
With that in mind, do you have any more questions, Madam Mayor, you wanted me to answer?
No, my question was actually for the city attorney. Director Arnscothorpe, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm a little confused here, and I'll state that it appears to me that the expectation for tonight by Councilmember Charbonneau and his disappointment is that I didn't come in with a fully developed staff report with a robust recommendation with a lot of background information. That is the kind of thing that I get the full council to direct me to do. We don't work under the request of an individual council member. I'm glad to meet with you individually, to hear your ideas and to offer suggestions. I certainly met with Councilmember Charbonneau over this issue. Again, my expectation was that Council Charbonneau would be making this motion, getting further direction from you as to where we want to go with this. Quite frankly, I don't know what the direction tonight would be if we're to come back with an ordinance. You talked about, does it include provisions for mom and pop or for accessory dwelling? That's more than the Arch proposed draft ordinance. So that's going to require more discussion, more consideration, more behind the scenes, just conversations. And so that's why it's important that we begin this conversation. Let us know what your objectives are. We then go back and do our best to do the research, to reach out to jurisdictions. I haven't had the luxury that Councilmember Charbonneau has of talking to all these places. I'm sure that he's got a wealth of information here. We don't have that at our fingertips. So, I'm sure he'll be willing to share that. Arch is a resource, but they're not at our beck and call to be staff to us unless, we've arranged somehow, for consultant work of sort. So I'm just a little confused over what the expectation was, and I need to make sure we're clear on what this means going forward. Just a reality check in terms of, getting this done, and if there was a question over, staff burden, as of today, I have 38 calendar days before my last day in City Hall. And so, I just don't know that personally I can do too much with that time and still accomplish all that I need to do before my last day. So just a bit of reality check there. Others can pick this up, but it means that we likely won't be coming back immediately with a cooked, ready-to-go ordinance for you to take action on at the next meeting. There's going to be some follow-up meetings for this, follow-up discussions, and we just need to know what the objective is. And by the way, I did not suggest that the additional items that Councilmember Charbonneau wanted to do that we wouldn't consider or couldn't. Council Charbonneau suggested himself that if it meant undermining the Arch portions, he would leave those out, but had some things that he would like to add. There was one item regarding parking I suggested that I would not support because it was contrary to ordinances we just adopted. But that's as far as that went. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear on what the expectation was. I'm disappointed on the disappointment. I don't understand it and what the expectation really was. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, and
Yes,
in addition,
thank
we
you.
are losing a senior planner in about 2 to 3 weeks, and that leaves your department very shy on personnel to address this issue. In
Madam Mayor,
addition,
can I respond?
I was really taken back when I saw this come up on the agenda, because typically when 2 council members request something, it does go to the planning calendar. And that's kind of our cue that it's in the works.
Madam Mayor.
And this kind of went around that process, and I'm not sure why. So,
Madam Mayor, it was on the planning calendar.
okay.
I have the emails to show you. I can show you the emails
I
about
don't
that.
need you to do that, but let's continue the conversation.
Okay, thank you, Director Osgothorpe. Candidly, I'm disappointed. I think you did not adequately describe the issue. I think you gave equal credence to a sort of very broad claim from real estate interests to a lot of other claims that are very significant. I think you didn't give context that a lot of other cities are doing this. I think you didn't give context that Arch would actually help. From what Arch has expressed to me when I took the time to meet with them, I would push back on your idea of like, I'm not saying they're at our beck and call, but they're happy to work on this. They have told me they're happy to work on this. I guess what I was just pointing out is what you told me when we were meeting most recently was that the process here would be move forward. If approved, this moves forward to public hearing, and then after that, would come back again for a vote. I understand it can take a little while. I'm not saying this needs to happen right now. I do think it is a big issue, but I would like the ball to be rolling. I understand that you might need to be handed off, but I mean, we talked about other issues too that you wanted to address or brief me on that would also need to be handed off. So I wasn't saying you need to do this right away. I would like to get the ball rolling on this because a lot of other cities are doing it as well. I think it is a need. And frankly, I don't know how else to accommodate sort of the staff needs when I reach out more than 2 months in advance, do a lot of proactive work on my own and put it on the planning calendar, which Rob Wyman told me to do, and provide and not answer any questions and meet with you about it personally. So in terms of your confusion, I would like to move, this forward tonight to go through that process you just described me. Would that not happen if we approve this?
Oh, I want to turn it over to our city manager, Larson. He has some comments. Go ahead, city manager.
Mayor, and with all due respect to council members, including Councilmember Charbonneau, I want to close the discussion about how we got arrived at this meeting tonight. I think it's not productive, and there's a difference of opinion, and I want to leave it at that. What clearly has to be done, though, is council has to decide as a body to move this forward. Whether or not they want to do that, they have to take a vote. And so I want to limit the debate again on this because it's not a particular council member that can bring something forward for staff to work on. It has to be approved by council. How it got off the planning calendar onto the council agenda, I guess that I was going to bring that up later when we talk about the planning calendar itself, because staff is still reviewing if there's an internal policy. There's two different ways it happens apparently, and I'm trying to discover or at least figure out how that works. There's some other items that I think councilors want to put on the planning calendar or move off the planning calendar and get to the agenda. And I think council needs to understand how that should work and how it has been working, perhaps informally. But with that, I want to close that discussion with all due respect, and we need to move off of this issue and have council make a decision. Do they want to bring this back?
I move to bring the proposed arch ordinance. Pretty quick, Wyatt, I don't know if you can help me with the language here. Sorry, I hear someone else talking.
If I could, this is City Manager Larson. There was a proposed or at least suggested motion from the city attorney. If you would be okay with him repeating that fit the description what you had earlier, we can at least start the debate with that.
So, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but what I was hearing the ask be is it would be a motion to direct staff to present an ordinance adopting the Arch Tenant Protection Program or protections and have a public hearing on the same.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
I'll second that, but do we need a date or is it just what?
I mean, sure, but I don't know staff time on that. If it's, I mean, if there's a model ordinance and Councilmember Charbonneau can email that to me, I mean, I can review that fairly quickly, I'm sure. But then, I think the timing would be just as staff can do it, just given the current state of the timeline.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor made by Councilmember Charbonneau, seconded by Deputy Mayor Sherlock, to direct staff to bring back an ordinance addressing the tenant protection program. Councilmember Charbonneau, anything to add?
Sorry, I'm been talking to a black screen this whole time. I know I can see the council. Sorry. So, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, this very much, I'm frustrated that this process conversation has taken as much time. I'm frustrated that the people that we should be hearing from tonight are not here because of this process. I'm frustrated that what has been described to me by this organization as the low-hanging fruit of tenant protections is so contentious. I think this very much merits return back for review. I think this very much merits public hearing. There's adequate resources out there for staff to leverage in doing that. And I think there's no specific end date. So I think it's worth it. I think it's worth noting too, this will affect hundreds of people. This will affect hundreds of people that we do not hear from for a lot of structural reasons, for a lot of equity reasons. And I was so excited to get some of them at the town hall. And these people have not had a voice forever, just quite frankly. And many, many cities are doing this and doing beyond this. And this is where I'd like to start. And I think it's a very reasonable request.
Deputy Mayor Sherlock, anything to add?
Just that I am interested to hear more. That's why I'm supporting this.
Councilmember Clark?
Thank you, Mayor Newing. So I need some clarification perhaps, and the city attorney or somebody can help me out. So bringing back the ordinance and a public hearing at the same time doesn't make sense to me. So it seems to me the first step would be to have a public hearing and then us as a council group decide what we wanted to talk about. Because if we adopted as written the arch proposals, that doesn't address my concern about small businesses or ADUs. So I think creating an ordinance at this point is out of order. I think that a further discussion would be fine, but I don't see a window to address my concerns at this point, and I think the public hearing should precede an ordinance. So I would say, so I can't support the motion as discussed because it doesn't make sense to me. The order's wrong. And I would be fine with a public hearing and a further discussion amongst us about what we felt should be in the ordinance, but to go straight to the ordinance, no. So I will make a...
Actually, I have staff comment on that.
Sure, please.
Director Osgathorpe, go ahead, please.
Yeah, this seems pretty straightforward to me at this point, and basically what we just did is essentially what I expected to happen tonight, is just get some formal direction from you that, yes, please work on this, and by the way, these are some things we'd like you to work on and to consider. So the way I see this playing out is that we get direction from you tonight, what you'd like the ordinance to include, what you'd like us to consider, if you'd like us to look at some provisions to address, the mom and pop operations, the accessory dwelling units or whatever. We can look at that, compare that to the draft ordinance that I do have from Arch. We can then coordinate, with our city attorney on what any legal concerns we may have. We then come back with you with a proposal that's kind of in draft form, and you give us your feedback, and if it looks like it's hitting the sweet spots, we can get it into a draft ordinance format and have it prepared for a public hearing. And we typically do have a draft ordinance, for public hearing, so people know what to comment on. Doesn't mean it's cast in stone, but that's kind of how this would proceed. And if the public hearing, you get feedback and we need to tweak it more, we can do that, but it just kind of is that iterative step.
Thank you. Okay, there's a motion. Anything else, city attorney?
Did Councilmember Clark want to amend, or?
But
No.
I was just gonna say that the draft ordinance generally informs the public hearing, so it gives people something to work off of, and then you as the council discuss after public hearing.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yep. Deputy Mayor Sherlock?
Just another question to clarify. So then, potentially, when we're discussing a draft ordinance, amendments could be made, which might mean we wouldn't be able to adopt it that night. We'd have to maybe come back to it. Is that kind of how part of the process as well sometimes?
Sometimes if it's a word here or there, you might verbalize that, and we could kind of do that on the fly, but usually we would bring back a clean, complete ordinance at your next meeting
Okay.
for final adoption.
Okay, thank you.
I would ask, Madam Mayor, before you vote on this, I would be happy to entertain any amendments from council to get to a comfort level of this, to move this forward, because I think it would be very much a shame if one small sticking point or one absence of an amendment would tank this, because this is an important issue.
I don't think there are amendments. I think Director Osgathorpe and our city attorney explained the process more thoroughly. Director Osgathorpe, go ahead, please.
And maybe just one more item, if I may, and just to make sure that Councilmember Charbonneau, you have expressed, what your desire is, and this is your opportunity to add any additional things you would like us to put in the mix. If there's some things that other cities have done that you'd like us to add to this consideration, we can certainly do that. We're just waiting for you to kind of give us, your proposal, your pitch there, and see if the council agrees, and that just becomes part of our process.
All right. Thank you, Director Osgood. And keeping in mind that this would help Director Osgood more to amend it at this stage than amending it later, I move to amend the Arch Draft Ordinance to include the following 3 items. Item number 1, providing a payment date option in terms of day of the month for folks that are on a fixed income or receiving Social Security. Item number 2, banning landlords from asking tenants about their immigration status. And item number 3, considering a separate policy for accessory dwelling units and small businesses relative to larger landlords.
Can you repeat item 3, please?
Considering a exemption for or altered guidelines for accessory dwelling units and small businesses.
So I would second this because I am interested in hearing more about these. But I'm wondering, do we need a motion, or is this just ideas to throw out stuff?
I was moving to amend, so they had direction. Staff did.
Okay, but we're not actually creating the ordinance here tonight. We're just directing staff to bring back a proposed ordinance that has gone through legal reviews to the attorney.
Right, so I'd be interested in adding these things now so that you can go through that process, and then once we get to the discussion, if we want to amend it to take them off, that's a lot easier than amending to put stuff on. And is that correct?
Generally speaking, yeah, it's much easier just to delete things.
But again, through the process, we'll look at these issues, we'll explore it and find out whether we think it's feasible. And if so, we'll make it part of the final, we'll keep you informed through the process. And the good news here, by the way, is, well, a couple things. I'm pretty sure this will be exempt from SEPA. I'm pretty sure it's exempt from notifying Department of Commerce because it's not a development regulation. So that takes it out of those 2 notice requirements. I don't see this as having to go to the Planning Commission because it's not within, I don't know, we'll have to confirm that. I don't believe it's within their code purview. So we can pretty much work directly with council on this, so it'll be a little easier from that standpoint.
Yeah, I was wondering about the planning commission component, so thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, usually they're more, the land development regulations.
Yeah.
This is more of a,
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Oh, City Clerk White,
City
that's
Clerk has a
you
point of
who,
order. I'm sorry. We're debating a motion that hasn't been seconded as far as I can tell.
it was seconded.
And
The
you're
amendment was seconded.
Thank you very much.
Yes, it was. Thank you. As you were. Permission granted. Okay,
The amendment was not seconded.
it was,
Was it? Oh, okay.
yeah. Okay,
I
there,
speak my motion.
yeah, I need to repeat the amendment, so if I can finish this, I will turn it over and ask for comments to your amendment. Okay, there's an amendment to the main motion to include in the draft ordinance a payment date option, banning landlords asking about immigration status, and considering exemption for altered guidelines and small businesses. Councilmember Charbonneau, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Thank you. Yes, so there were multiple of these. I went over with Steve. I even threw a couple out because we think it didn't make sense for Newcastle. The fixed income payment, I think, is critical. We have a lot of residents who are older. This does not exempt them from paying their rent. It makes it so they have an option based on when they receive their Social Security so that they can align that so they can receive their Social Security and they pay their rent. I think that's eminently fair. It does not stop the landlord from receiving any funds, and I think it's worth consideration. The city of Kenmore has done it as well as a few others, so there's a model there. Banning asking about immigration status is actually a Washington state law, but cities can exempt it, or cities, cannot choose not to apply it. I'd like to apply it. If you we have folks that are not U.S. citizens that live here as tenants. I've met a couple of them. And again, it's a Washington state law, so it'd be easy to copy it there. And I think we talked about prior looking at the accessory dwelling units and small businesses and treating those differently. And I think that's definitely worth consideration.
Deputy Mayor Sherlock, anything to add?
Nope.
Okay, the amendment on the floor is to include in the draft ordinance payment date option, banning landlords from asking about immigration status, and considering exemption for altered guidelines in small businesses. All in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Ayes have it, 6-1 with Councilmember Griffin dissenting. Back to the main motion as amended. Direct staff to bring back an ordinance and hold a public hearing on a tenant protection program that includes payment date option, banning landlords to ask about immigration status, and considering exemption for altered guidelines in small businesses. Sorry, I can't read my writing. All in favor of the motion? I'm sorry. Okay. And the 3 arch items that were in the original motion. Thank you. All in favor of the motion as amended, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 7-0. Motion carries.
And Mayor, if I can just, one more, just
Yes.
bit of information as far as process, if it's helpful, is that now that we have this direction from you, now we'll spend the time on this. We will prepare a well-developed, grandiose presentation, report back to you. And when we have the public hearing will be the ideal opportunity for those individuals that Councilmember Charbonneau is hoping to testify to actually do it at the public hearing. That's where we normally get that kind of feedback, and that's where you decide whether you want to move forward to adopt the ordinance. So that's the normal process. So I just hope that's helpful in kind of laying that out.
Thank you, I appreciate that. All right, moving on. Additional public comment. Any members of our in-person audience wishing to speak? Okay,
Yes,
and
Mayor, we have
Director
Carol Simpson.
Bruns. Okay, go ahead. And this is to speak on a completely different topic than previously spoken upon during our first public comment session.
Okay. Where'd you go? Oh, there we
Oh,
go.
we have her on camera now.
Hey, I finally figured that out. Okay, so good evening, Carol Simpson, a resident of Olympus. I wanted to comment on the meeting. I too am frustrated. I hear you. That was painful going through that, putting that item on the agenda. It would have been better if you'd also added a date certain when you want it on the agenda. It would have been great if you'd had a council retreat earlier this year to prioritize what's on your planning calendar for this year. Because the highest priority is getting started on your comprehensive plan, which you only have a year and a half left to finish. And the city has no public outreach plan, it has no schedule, nothing. And I'd hope that your very esteemed and well-versed planning director, Steve Osgaport, could work on that before he leaves and set that up for you, rather than wait for the next planning director. We don't know when that person will be appointed. We're also losing Dave Vandewey, who's also knows the city fairly well in his few years he's been here. These are huge losses to our planning. Council members should learn that when you ask for an ordinance to be brought forward, you don't have to act on it immediately. You will be holding a public hearing, and the public needs to know what they're commenting on. Otherwise, they could be commenting on anything. And that would be very confusing. I've had people live in my home and rent a room in my home twice before. And I've been a renter, so I understand the concerns. And my son is a renter. He also rented for me. I charged him rent. So getting back to how you plan to spend the pandemic funds, a lot of the items on your list are fiscal sustainability actions. The only thing that you didn't get to explaining was the fiscal sustainability action. I didn't hear what that is, but investing in downtown brings us a return. I'm very concerned that the value of downtown is decreasing, our old downtown center, and they're paying less property tax. We need to make it up in more sales tax. Investing in downtown will bring more shoppers to them. We can't measure it necessarily, just like I can't measure how much I have paid in sales tax this year to the city of Newcastle. I haven't saved my receipts. Have you? So most of those actions will bring us back increased sales tax revenue, and that is fiscal sustainability. But get with your comp plan, because you and your residents want to weigh in on the future of our city, and you need a public process and a plan and a schedule outlined now before Steve Osgothorpe leaves. Please. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's it, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Director Bronze. Okay, planning calendar, City Manager Larson, what do you have for us?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to start at the top and just go through some of the highlights in addition to the regular council meetings. There'll be a special meeting next Tuesday, June 28th, of the City Council in executive session to review the, I believe, the candidates for City Manager. The following week, we've got Independence Day, 4th of July is on Monday the 4th. City Hall will be closed. Following day is regular City Council meeting. And then we're still working on the date of a special City Council meeting, sometime looks like in mid-July, I believe, again to look at the candidates for City Manager. And I believe that it will include a public open house of sorts. We're working on that. I gotta get the details. And from there, then we're going to resume the councils in the park on July 20th at Lakebourne Park at 7 p.m. And then from there, the regular council meeting on July 5th looks like the lineup is Public Works, Public Works, Public Works. All good things, though, but Jeff's got it well in hand. Got any questions about that? And then regarding the, there's going to be on the consent agenda for July 19th, I believe, a confirmation for the Planning Commission that Paul's been dutifully working on, as well as the missing middle housing grant coming from Steve. We'll also be working towards the pandemic relief plan. I'm not sure if that'll be on July 19th at this point, but August probably. Yeah, I'll work with the mayor on that, as we discussed earlier, about the timing for that. And then I want to make just another comment about the process for getting items onto the actual council calendar or agenda. Staff is currently reviewing how an item moves from the planning calendar onto regular city council meeting, and I will confess at this point that we're still needed to find out if that's more of an informal process or formal, and we'll certainly bring it back for council consideration as we can develop the perhaps some guidelines in that. Right now, there's two ways. One's an informal process. It's an email that usually is sent to the city manager, who shares that with the mayor. It has to come from two agreeing council members to put it on the planning calendar. The other one is more formal motion that would be at a regular council meeting, a motion and a second from two council members in open session. That's another way to get it on the planning calendar. Again, I want to reiterate, getting it to move from the planning calendar onto a regular council meeting agenda is still being reviewed. I want to bring that back so that all council members understand clearly how that would work. Oh, excuse me, Mayor, that concludes my report on the planning calendar.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Sherlock.
Thank you. We keep talking about National Night Out on August 2nd. I would like to, if it's appropriate, I'd like to make an motion now to cancel that council meeting.
Yep, I was going to ask for that. Is there a second? Oh, second.
Second.
Okay, second. All right, it's been moved by Deputy Mayor Sherlock, seconded by Councilmember Clark to cancel August 2nd's meeting in lieu of National Night Out. This is a tradition among city council meetings. Deputy Mayor Sherlock, would you like to speak to your motion?
Sure, yeah, this is a tradition, and it gives the council, opportunity to go out in the community for a National Night Out and speak to residents and community members, and it's very fun, and I think it's important for us to talk like normal people to each other.
Councilmember Clark, anything to add?
No, I don't.
Okay, motion on the floor to cancel the August 2nd meeting in lieu of National Night Out. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Okay, no other questions? This concludes our meeting. Thank you.